call tonight's meeting to order. It's Monday, March 25th, 2019. This is a meeting of the Town of Halifax Finance Committee. We're being recorded by Area 58. On tonight's agenda, mail, meeting minutes, building maintenance budget discussion, as may arise, and public participation. There's no mail and no meeting minutes, so we can move right on to the building maintenance budget discussion with Scott Materna. So Scott, do you want to come up?
Sure. Strapping.
And do you know everyone on the committee now? I know we've had some new faces.
I'm not sure if we've met, no.
No, I'm Brad.
Scott.
Heard your name.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So we can pull out, we have 2 copies of the budget sheets here.
Hey.
There you go. We just got started, Scott just sat down. We don't have mail or meeting minutes, so. Scott does all the building, so I'm gonna find the line here.
Starts at line 38.
What was that, Sammy?
Starts at line 38.
30, thank you. Sorry, Scott, we could have had to take your time
No
to walk
problem.
up to the front. Giving you a leisurely
It's gonna take me longer to come up with an answer if you ask me any questions about numbers.
Alright,
There's
So-
only 3 lines, I think.
yeah, and so what I can do is fill you in on sort of what we've been doing up to this point. So we've gone through the budget as of right now, and we started off by voting to recommend preliminarily any line that was a level fund request or a decreased request over last year, just to get a sense of where we were. And then starting, not last week, but the week before, after talking with all department heads about their requests, we started going through and considering lines where there had been increased requests. And again, talking through those, voting on whether or not we recommend them, as well as on the articles, and just constantly kind of filling in more information on where we stand, so that hopefully we can, this week or early next, make kind of our overall set of recommendations that can go into the warrant. So that's sort of what we've been doing up to this point. So we'll start with line. And the one thing we haven't done is touch anything with salary or wage, because wage and personnel hasn't made recommendations yet on across the board increases.
We have to in this case because there's a change to personnel. So we don't need to talk about the wage increase or the steps or anything, but there's a change in requested personnel.
Okay.
So that we have to.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right. So line 38, clerical. This one is just a wage and personnel line, so we don't have to do this one this evening. We have to wait on wage for that one. Line 39, building committee expense was a level fund request, so we voted to, we already voted to recommend that one. Line 41, town buildings expense would be the only other one that's not a wage.
What's this?
Yep, so Scott, this was the $5,000, if you recall, that was an increase. I don't know if you were ever able to find out what the $5,000 was for.
No, I did not, no.
Okay.
Are there any notes on the sheet?
There's a list of expenses, but I don't know what the prior year expense line items were. So it's just a summary of what the
Yeah.
total is now.
Uniforms, tools.
Why is last year's the plug number?
Isn't that how we
Well,
start every one?
that's, when we put it in on the computer, I put it in as one number. So when I was doing these sheets, I did it from the computer. So I just had it as one number. We don't, I didn't go back to last year's sheets to find out what each was. I will do it for next year though, now that we're getting into each line.
So for this line, the big number is uniforms, tools, electrical and plumbing supplies, hardware, paint and lumber, but there's a $17,500 miscellaneous line, which I assume is just to cover other stuff, but I don't think we know if there was something in particular, whether it was uniforms or probably not, because that was only 1,800. Electrical and plumbing supplies were 3,000 a piece, and then paint and lumber was 6,500. So I'm guessing it was just the miscellaneous line that increased, just looking at the raw numbers that are listed. Because nothing else comes close.
Is it?
Where are you looking at those numbers?
There are additional, each line item has a separate
Yeah.
budget sheet.
So right here, so this is for the line.
Yeah. Oh, no, but he was right in the,
They're talking.
okay, that's what we.
Yeah,
Yeah.
17.5 and
So
stuff.
in the past years, that was actual for FY18. This was actual for FY17. This is your incidental, so water heater goes, you usually do it out of this one.
Okay. All right. So it's going down to that? Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is actual. So this is what was voted last year.
okay.
So FY19, that's what you were given. I don't know how the budget is so far this year.
As far as I know, we're in pretty good shape.
Okay.
Sue's not worried. I'm not worried.
So what I was just discussing with Scott was that the last 2 years before, in FY18 and FY17, he exceeded the amount that was voted for FY19. This budget, his expense budget, is what he uses when there's incidentals. Library window gets broken, the water heater in one of the buildings goes. He uses this expense budget rather than the preventative maintenance budget. That's why they're separate, to fund those. So I would look at the past history, the 2 years, the FY18, FY17, that were both higher than what was budgeted FY19 when you consider this.
Yeah.
It's not as high as what was asked for, but
Was it just pinching last year that we didn't ask for what was spent the prior year? Was there like a late incident or something that we had to cover? Because we voted 48, but we ended up spending almost 52.
You said a preventative maintenance line.
No, you shouldn't have, no. It's a separate line.
No, that's what your question is.
Oh, I'm looking at the preventative maintenance. Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, so what was asked for last year was 32.8, and what was spent was 32.4 prior year. I think I just did what you did, Sandy.
what was spent the year before in FY18 was 33.6.
I don't have that on here.
32,445.
Yeah, it's on the,
On the,
this sheet.
Okay, oh, on the individual sheet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Okay, it's
for,
different on
Sorry
the
about
summary
that.
sheet.
so for
So that was
2015
probably my error.
actual, it was 3,100. For actual 2017, it was 35,800. For actual 2018, it was 33,600.
Yep.
Is that one right, or is the 32.4
Yeah.
right? On the main sheet?
Well, now, the town
Yeah.
meeting approved for FY19, 32.8.
Right, but the.
no,
the
yeah,
expense
that's a
sheet
good
is-
question, and I would have to go back to my computer to
Oh, I see what you're saying.
to check that.
Okay.
We have a difference in our director, and he has been able to save us costs on electrical because he's an electrician, so.
You doing the streetlights?
Sorry? No habla streetlights.
So I think what we're gonna get hung up on is like, what is the actual request for line 41 for expense? Because the FY20 request is 38,150, but a lot of that is just this, that miscellaneous line item doesn't have the other description on it.
Mm,
It looks just like an increase from miscellaneous, because it's the only line that comes close to.
Yeah, and
Everything else
it's,
is below 5 anyway, except for one other line, I think. So that would be my guess.
yeah,
So why don't we, if you happen to find something otherwise, I think we'll just assume that's what it was for.
all right. I'll revisit it,
Yeah.
But
On that
also,
end.
also if you think it's needed.
pardon me?
Also, if you think it's needed, not miscellaneous,
Well, that's Scott's call.
I don't even have a year, I haven't even gone through a whole budget yet, so I'd kind of like to see how things, I don't really feel like I'm a good person to answer that right now, because I haven't seen how things flush out at the end of the year yet.
Right, so I'll check and see what was actually expended, which
Okay.
number is correct, and then maybe, rather than the 5,000, maybe going a little lower, but still bringing it up. I think it still has to
Yeah.
come up a little bit, but
yeah, well, I mean, it
maybe
looks
not
like,
quite as much.
if we take the last 3 years, even like 35 even would be reasonable, because that would hit the, that kind of provides a little padding over the last 3 fiscal years. Just looking at the spreadsheet, but I think it'd be helpful just because we have been asking everybody questions about what the increases are for and been talking about them as we put the budget together, so we can table the vote on line 41, town buildings expense. Line 42 is a preventative maintenance line.
Yep, I've got notes on that one.
Okay.
From Scott, that I can talk to, and Scott, you can
Yeah,
fill in anything I miss, so.
All right,
yeah.
The big increases for preventative maintenance were a new contractor for the elevator contract. So I don't know if you want to give some of the flavor you gave me about the previous contract or not.
yeah, we had a lot of difficulties with the previous contractor, they were billing for things that they didn't show up and do, not showing up to calls in a timely manner, so we had to get rid of them. And we couldn't find anyone as cheap as them, we did the next best, so it was a little increase on that.
We had elevator issues last year.
Yeah, it was shut down, this past summer it was shut down quite a bit.
I think we had to cancel a couple of meetings because of it. if I'm
I
not
wouldn't
mistaken.
doubt it.
Because I think I came in for a conservation commission meeting and they couldn't have it because there was no elevator.
Yeah, we actually had an entrapment, and it took them 6 hours to get here. We got the guy out way ahead of that, but just the fact that they didn't show up in that kind of town, that was enough. So,
that's preventative maintenance line, or?
Yeah.
for elevators,
Yeah.
Yeah, there are the breakdowns in the individual budget sheet, but I took extra notes because I talked to Scott previously.
the other big increase I remember is HVAC, we added a whole contract for the library.
Yeah.
Yep, so my notes were it was $1,500 a year, hadn't previously been included in the preventative maintenance budget. The library's industrial, it was not commercial. I mean, it's not like a residential unit, it's a commercial unit.
Right.
So is this $1,500 just for the library, HVAC, or
Correct.
townwide?
Library only. 2 units.
It's, we don't have HVACs and that requires the same maintenance anywhere else, or?
The only ones we have that are like system are the new ones on the police station, they're under warranty.
Okay. And all the rest are?
All the other ones are a regular homeowner style.
What does that mean, like through a window?
No, it's called hydro air, so you still have the condenser outside, but it goes through like a hot air furnace in the basement, just has a coil inside that. It looks like what you'd find inside a residence. It's just, a lot of the buildings have 2, 3, 4, but they're not commercial type units.
So those don't need service, or they come somewhere else?
As far as I know, we've just called guys in as needed. We do some of the servicing ourselves,
Okay.
because they're a little less finicky.
Go ahead.
Sorry, what's an elevator fee?
I'm sorry?
This is elevator fee. Your inspections have increased, what's an elevator fee?
I suspect that's the state inspection, possibly, Scott,
Very possible.
because it does have to get inspected by the state, and I'm sure there's a fee associated with that.
Yeah.
It's probably true of all the elevators, if we have more than one.
Right, yeah. We've got 2.
And then the only other note I have here is alarm monitoring fees.
Yep.
increased?
They've just gone up on their monitoring costs.
It's another third-party contract.
So the request for line 42, town building preventative maintenance is for 52,616, which is an increase of $4,565 over fiscal year 19. Does anyone have any other questions for Scott about line 42? Or Scott, is there anything else you want to say about that one?
I'm sure I'll think of something later, but nothing right now.
If you'd like, I can entertain a motion for the Finance Committee's recommendation on line 42, town building preventative maintenance in the amount of $52,616. Or we can table it till a later discussion.
I'd rather table it.
Okay.
We haven't had the broader discussion yet, but we're nearly there.
Okay. So 42A was that temp line that we put in fiscal year 19, $15,000 for the COA temporary location. We're just gonna leave that line blank but hold the line in case we need one in the future. Is that right, Sandy?
Yeah.
Okay. So no action on that one. And we already recommended line 43, town building snow and ice. That was a level expense request of $3,000.
Do you wanna talk about the, line 40?
Yeah. So line 40, town buildings custodial, the FY 20 request is $190,978, which is a $16,093 increase over fiscal year 19. So let's go to line 40. And Scott, do you wanna tell us a little bit about that?
That's your personnel, getting rid of the summer
okay.
and part-timer and then adding a full.
So our part-time guy is going to be retiring. He actually just talked to me today. He's thinking around November. He'll be retiring. At that point, I'd like to replace him with a full-time guy. Like Sandy said, I'm an electrician, so I've been doing a lot of electrical work, including troubleshooting things that might not necessarily be an electrical issue, but I'm doing the work, so I'm not as available to the guys as Jerry was. So, and we're being asked to do more things, and OSHA's getting in now, and we've got more regulations to adhere to, so it's gonna take up more manpower, that's all.
So bringing another electrician or?
Nope, just another guy, same grade as the other two full-timers, we've got grade 4. I mean, if we get another electrician, that'd be fine. I'd really rather find someone that's got carpentry experience, and, you know, handle some of the renovation stuff.
And that factors in the skill level that you're seeking in this number?
That would give you 3 full-timers.
I mean, if we get another guy, grade 2, I'd really just rather keep the part-time guy, to be honest with you. If it's not grade 4, it's not gonna be, we're not gonna get anyone with any skill that's really gonna be helpful in a lot of places other than cleaning. And cleaning doesn't work full-time because we can't be running a vacuum and doing things while everyone's in doing business. You know, it just doesn't work.
So you're going from a grade 2 part-time to, or looking to go from a grade 2 part-time to grade 4
full-time. But we'd also eliminate one of the summer help completely. So
So it's temporary? Is that what that means, temporary summer help?
yeah, we usually get two guys for the summer for, I think it's 2 months, 3 months.
What he has in is usually 800 hours of summer help, and he's cutting it down to 400 hours of summer help. How many buildings do you take care of?
14.
14 buildings,
That all the town-owned buildings?
Yeah.
except for the school.
Of course, now we're also being tasked with all the buildings that the town takes in on tax issues. We've got one on South Street that we have to board up, make it safe, kill the water, kill the power, check on it, things like that. So, like I said, there's just new things all the time.
If, because of the broader budget, there wasn't space available to add this full-timer, would there be sort of a backup option or like the silver plan request that which we've been asking of everyone, if we can't get the ultimate thing that you want, is there something that would cost less that would still help? still move the ball forward? Would there be, or would that be basically the current system of having 800 hours of the summer help?
I'd probably just go back to the summer help and keep the part-time guy, keep it the same as, as is.
What's the gain for the grade 4? What do you expect to gain by bringing that skill level in?
A little more independence, someone that can kind of leave on a job, doesn't need to be spoon-fed, got some knowledge, can think on his feet.
Okay.
If we bring in someone, for $16 an hour, you're not gonna get that. And to be honest, the two guys I get now, they need more seasoning,
Sure.
so.
And what's a grade for? What's the hourly rate?
I don't, let's see.
Here's the grade 4, here's the grade.
Actually, the grade 4 would start at 16, the grade 2 is at 14. Starts at 14.59. So it starts at 16.32, but it goes up 6
There's the grade
steps.
for step 1.
To,
Yeah, but what's the hourly rate?
Hourly rate for the grade 2 step 1 is
Up to
that?
20, I think.
all right. So the grade 4, step 1 is at 16.32, the grade 4, step 6 is 20.26, so we'll go to that. The grade 2, step 1 starts at 14.59. I'm not sure how high it goes up to.
And grade 2 can only do cleaning, just based on
Can't use
the salary.
power tools and stuff.
Right, based on the description, the job description, strictly janitorial. So they can't help anyway through repairs.
So it wouldn't even be worth that extra set of hands to you.
No, it would strictly be cleaning. But gentlemen, now we don't even ask them to, shovel snow, even though he's there.
So within
Six
all
in the
this, you cover all the cleaning of the buildings as well?
Cleaning, maintenance, repair, incidentals. Our job description is basically anything that no one else wants to do.
No, I get that, Scott.
I've been in facilities work a long time. If you can take care of all the town buildings for these numbers, you're working some miracles. I just don't know how you're gonna get anybody with skill at $20 an hour. Not today.
Difficult.
Yeah. That's starting wage for a helper that's got all those fingers.
Yeah, the guys we hire now, we ask them to have a hoisting license.
At $20 an hour?
Exactly. So it's difficult. Very difficult. Otherwise, we have a lift. We got a $50,000 lift that they can't use
Hoisting license on the streets worth $35.
all day long. Otherwise, you get a job that's
I
running.
know where my
needs a
support
hoist.
lies, so.
Well, but I think this is an important question though, is
Yeah.
this, and again, it's not to make any commitments, obviously, we still have to have the broader budget discussion, but is this, for what you need, is asking for the other grade 4, step 1, not the most reasonable request, but
Can I
what you
ask,
actually need?
can I ask a devil's advocate question?
Yeah,
How long
yeah,
have you
yeah.
had the current staffing levels?
Since I started, it was that way before I got there.
5 years, 10 years?
But I'm also getting pulled away doing electrical stuff now.
Right,
I don't think it's been different.
No,
no,
Really,
It's-
no.
we're talking more than 10 years.
Decades?
Yeah. And we
And
asked for
they've
help,
been-
and I think Bradford kind of alluded to it, like, it's really such a testament to this department that they've been able to keep up. I mean, I think Sandy mentioned that there's 14 buildings and there's only a couple of full-timers and some part-timers. So, I mean, with the amount of staff that they do, this building is really, all of them are kept up and,
And there's
we're
things-
super appreciative.
like the insulation falling down at the town barn that
I mean,
they
it's-
have to get to, but getting to it
And,
is,
and the thing is, it's like, you get to this stuff before private school college. I mean, like when I was upstairs, when I was first doing like interviews and stuff like that, and the 2 lights were out. And the only reason they've been out for like 3 weeks is because they're so busy. They couldn't even get to them because it's that time of year.
We've got half-done jobs in probably half the buildings that we have, because it's Band-Aid, you get the tools out, you get the ladders out, the lifts out, something else pops up, you gotta abandon it and leave. So it's just,
So
at some point, it's gonna come to a head.
Yeah,
this has been a request for a while,
Sure.
but I totally respect
well,
where we are
I say it all the time, right?
budget-wise.
Because everybody that's presented everything has, and nobody's presented anything where I've said absolutely not, that's
Yeah,
unreasonable.
yeah,
But we're running out of money quickly
We
here,
get it.
so
yeah.
And
we gotta ask the tough questions.
I think that's,
No, it's good, you should.
just for like informational purposes,
Don't
just
you
because
worry.
I'm not used, or I'm, Brad obviously has a lot of experience with this, but my question is the grade 4 step 1 the best thing to ask for, given the kind of skills that we're expecting this person to
Well,
have and given the market?
It would probably be the highest grade available, I would guess. but
Yeah, that's what
probably
it sounds like, at least it's a start.
That's trying to hope just to get in, get someone in and then go from there. I didn't think we'd have a shot at going at a higher grade, so, to be honest.
So how many full-time are there currently? Two?
2
And how many
plus myself,
How many part-time?
1.
One, that's the
One part-time, 2 summer help.
And then the 2 summer help.
Yep. And the summer help are full-time during that period.
And what do they focus on?
Usually we pick a summer project, be it a bunch of painting or something like that, something larger, and we attack that with all the extra force that we got. Go after it. This year it's gonna be the, if it goes through, it's gonna be the front of Post Tavern, getting all new windows, scrape it, paint it, make it look new. And then next year go for another summer.
So with this grade 4, step 1, or whatever you guys said, would that leave any grade 2s?
There'd be no grade 2s at that point.
So with the higher skilled labor, who's gonna do vacuum the floors and stuff?
Yep.
That'd be part of the grade 4 responsibilities?
Yep. What I'd like to do is, in the summertime, we'll get the extra help, take that grade 4 guy, break him off with maybe the summer guys, or leave the summer guys on cleaning, and take the other 2 full-timers, and they can start on those projects at 7 in the morning instead of 10. It makes a world of difference.
Sandy, what's the difference for benefits for a part-timer versus a full-timer? The part-timers get health benefits, and
Anything over 20 hours gets health
is it
benefits?
prorated or anything, or is it the same?
No, same benefit for the health. Their leave time is prorated, so they,
Yep.
that's prorated, but anything over 20 hours is, does get health benefits. Now, his part-time person was not a 20-hour position, it was an 18-hour position.
I'm assuming summer help.
Summer help will not get, they don't get any benefits. They're seasonal, usually for 2.5 months at the most.
Yep.
So where would that be reflected?
Pardon me?
That's the line item that we're talking about for the special, because we've gone over, we've had some
The
additional.
group insurance.
Group insurance.
But that's such a, so you could have a part-time person who's 20 hours a week who needs health insurance, and a full-time person who's 40 hours a week who doesn't need health insurance. It's, you never know whether they're gonna take it or not. You don't hire on that basis.
Yep.
But does require to have it.
Pardon me?
You can waive it, like my wife has the option to have it, but I have it, so she waives her option. I imagine it's the same, as long as they have access elsewhere, if their spouse
Yep.
has it, or if they're retired elsewhere and have a benefit or something.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion on line 40, town buildings custodial?
Nope.
Scott, any other questions or anything for us?
that I can think of.
Okay, so we'll keep, obviously, as we have been doing, having broader discussions about the budget, filling in numbers, taking votes and that kind of thing. And if we have any questions, we'll definitely reach out to you. We're gonna have to have everything done by, the very beginning of April to get it into the warrant, but we'll make sure to get in touch with you ASAP if we've got any other questions.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming in, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Joy.
Next on the agenda is
See you
broader
around,
budget
Cowboys.
discussion.
What is it? Do you
Budget
wanna-
discussion.
Did you have a particular topic?
No, I'm
or-
just listening.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure
I'm
we
not
didn't-
here to cause
just wanted to make sure we didn't gloss over you or anything, if you had something in particular.
Yeah. So Sandy updated our worksheets. Thank you, Sandy, with everything that we've done votes on, as well as, we also have information on all the articles that we've taken votes on. So where we're really at now is, we're still holding those wage and personnel lines.
Yeah, when is that expected?
Thursday.
Thursday?
We're having a meeting on Thursday night,
Wage and personnel is or finance?
wage and personnel.
Okay, so Mondays are, is Monday, that's
That's
it,
it.
right, for Monday?
Make or break?
Yeah, we said Monday
That's
would
not
be
much
like,
time.
drop dead deadline.
Just so you know, I won't be.
Well, you could start budgeting on certain assumptions, whether,
Yep.
pick a number, pick 2%,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah. We could also start going through. I mean, we could have discussions about the schools, we can have,
Yeah, so what, Sandy, what changed from this version? Did the water, what's it called, the water, I keep forgetting it for whatever reason.
Water retained earnings,
What is it?
the water retained earnings.
No,
the enterprise fund?
no, the ponds.
On Quonset?
Oh,
Yes.
the stormwater management.
Yes, did that get included? Because I think that was like a
I have
116.
included the stormwater management. What's not in here is an OSHA line, but I did put in a line for the stormwater management. I used a spreadsheet that had been put together by a consultant. I added 114,300. That's what estimate was given for materials and consultant work. I took out the estimate that was for the labor because that Steve was,
Oh,
the labor was gonna be done by our highway department anyways, and Steve was trying to get the extra person, so I took that amount out. So that is between 83 and 84. I added the stormwater management line.
okay. So, with those changes, taking out the 300, taking out the 3,300 for the solar field tax, and taking out the 101 for the scheduled fire suppression, we're down to 108,427. So,
And there's still items in here that are not wage and personnel that we haven't voted yet that are still increasing.
There were some changes on the revenue end too. So I think that Charlie and I had already talked to you about putting in an extra 40,000 in motor vehicle excise. Also, one of the other local receipts is the lease revenue from the antennas on top of the water tower. That came in at about 75,000 this year, a little more than that. So we get half of that.
What,
Must have been over that.
but it's changed, so they may not be, know that why we're now getting that.
All right, so the water lease revenue, the antenna revenue, we had always split it between the general fund and the enterprise fund. It was an agreement that was made years ago, before me. My recollection was the water tower is owned by the water department, the land is owned by the town, so we split the revenue. We agreed when the water tower needed to be painted, and it was gonna be over $1 million, that for the life of the bond, they could keep all of the water, the lease revenue, because it would help them pay that off faster. Now that the bond is paid off, the debt for that painting is done, we're going back to splitting it for FY '20. So they made over 75,000, where I'm estimating about 35,000 for the town, so adding that to the revenues brought us up a little. So Len, I don't know if you got the one that I emailed you today.
Yep.
So that was on the synopsis page. I'm showing that after we take out the 300,000, the solar fields and the fire suppression, we're at 132, 288.
And Sandy, just to go over, in my mind, when we're talking with what's left, it's, are there assumptions on the line items that they've said yes to, even if there are increases?
That's including all the increases.
That's
These are
every
the ones that you haven't voted.
Okay, so one,
It's the budget as is on this expense sheet,
yes,
so.
yes, okay, which does not include wage and personnel across the board,
No,
does not
already
include
in
any
the
grade
contracts.
right sizing,
Right, or any union contracts.
union
It does
contracts.
include all the expenses line items that you actually haven't said yes to
Right.
either, so.
Right.
And all those things should be in the
Yes.
pot.
Right, so I guess my point is, I think Bill and I figured out last week that if we spend the full amount less our withholds for the 300, the solar field tax and the scheduled fire suppression, what did we say it was, like 5.6% increase on the tax rate?
Well, with the updated numbers from today, it ended up being 4.94%.
Updated, which updated numbers?
The updated revenue, the updated expense numbers.
Well, we
That's
already
right.
built that back into the amount that we have, right? So that wouldn't change.
But if we just adjusted the, if we just adjusted revenue with this latest spreadsheet, then I think that's probably what Bill's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 132, right, but the taxed amount, the levy amount is still the same. So what I'm saying is if we spend right now where we're sitting, with the revenue changes and all the expense items, less the wage and personnel recommendations, the union contracts and the stuff Charlie mentioned, we have a remainder of 132, right? So even if we spend the entire 132, the revenue line changed, but the tax
Yeah.
levy does not.
Right.
So what was the average? It was a $332,000 average assessment last year.
335.
335?
Yeah.
335 last year. The new rate would be 1844. So what was that, like 4 and change, I think we estimated annually on average? Okay, so the tax rate is, that's what we're looking at. If we spend the full amount of the levy less our withholds and the additional revenue assumptions.
The tax rate would be what?
It was a 5.6% increase,
It was-
1844, based on last year's assessment of 335. What was the total assessment, like 888,000?
I thought the average home value we worked with last year was like 299 or 300.
It was 305 or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Quite a bit.
Yeah,
So FY19's was 335 and change.
okay.
So 1844 tax rate on 335 will give you the average. So, my point is that we're still looking at a 5.6% increase if we spend every dime. We have 132,000 left to spend to even get to that point, and we haven't received yet the numbers from wage and personnel for grade right sizing, increases, union contracts, all that stuff. So, I think we're in jeopardy a little bit. It's not dire straits, but there are some things that have been asked for that we need to take into consideration, or we need to consider significantly chopping the wage and personnel, which we don't know what it is yet, but I think we assumed that 2% is what, an extra 100,000
Yeah.
or so.
And that's not just wage and personnel, that would be with the union contracts.
Union contracts, and that was,
And by union contract, we're simply saying the normal wage increase. If there's any change in longevity or
Right.
stipends or
And
anything
that would
else,
change it.
2% for everybody, forgetting about anything else is 100.
okay. So we should probably skim through the major increase in requests and see what we're comfortable getting rid of or reducing if the wage and personnel recommendation comes in.
We also haven't talked about schools. Which is obviously like,
Which piece, though? I think we did, right? We talked about, yeah, as a group, you mean?
Because that includes that bus.
Right, the
It's
bus.
like $95,000.
I'm just looking for some
Yeah.
options.
which I
yeah, no,
don't
so we
So
didn't
this
vote on
is-
line 71 elementary school costs, and we
So
didn't vote
these-
on line 75 Silver Lake
What we
assessment.
have,
Right.
right, less than 300, and then off of that, your 330, or 30, solar field and 101 for the scheduled fire suppression, which is going up next year, I think, right, about 180.
Right, but we already have money in there now that is offsetting that, because we have the temporary
Yeah.
interest, which will go back
Okay.
down.
Okay.
But the 40,000 does affect the levy. So, because the 35,000, the lease revenue, because it's additional local receipts, which means that we levy a little less. We tax a little less. So that's where Bill came up with the 4.94, because that's what we're looking at right now, because the revenues went up. And anytime the revenues go up, that means that you don't have to tax us.
Unless we spend the additional revenue.
No, even if we do.
No, I know, you're both right.
It's approximate challenge.
Sandy's correct that if everything else held true, if you went with the numbers that are in the budget right now, then the percentage increases to 4.9. If we spend up to the limit, under, subtracting the 300, you're
Yeah.
right about that too. Because, what you've projected is they're going to spend this much money out of the levy. But it's less than it was a couple of days ago because of the additional receipts. His projection says, we're still going to spend it all, even more so.
You're saying we spend that.
Yeah, because we had,
30,000.
All right. After the increases, we were looking at less than 100 available to
Right,
spend if
but-
we're gonna hold true to the, and now we're up to 130. So assuming we spend the 130, we're spending the full levy capacity less our withholds and the additional revenue projection. So we need to probably pick apart a couple things.
And that's so what we voted on the schools were, like the sped lines and the sped transportation and stuff like that. What we didn't vote on was the elementary school operating budget and the Silver Lake assessment.
Yeah, which I think the Silver Lake assessment's out the window anyway, right?
The Silver Lake, I think, is, we're the lowest.
Yeah.
And everybody else is gonna vote for it, so.
Yeah, even me, with my stinginess, I don't find much reason to go against
Neither
it.
do I.
Especially if the other two towns are here and
They're higher.
approving of it anyway. I had asked Kathy to reach out to the other finance committees via email,
Yeah.
just to see if they could send
Yeah, I
us something
talked to
back. Yeah, you said that.
Yeah, and they're fine. That's the thing with Plimpton, went up a lot, but their participation rate went up a lot too, so.
Yes.
There a lot of it was the minimal level of contribution,
Yeah.
went up a lot.
Yeah, theirs was the largest. So,
So that leaves us with the element. So if we assume that, does anyone else have any other questions or want to discuss the Silver Lake assessment, which is line 75, a request of $4,594,942.55, which is an increase of $138,530.55 over fiscal year 19, 3.1% increase.
I just have one question. Short version, what happened with the resource officer?
Oh,
is
right,
that still
those-
going forward in the warrant? The
Didn't
warrant
vote on
article?
it. Didn't we table that, because we had a split last time?
Oh, yes.
So we
yes,
said
yes.
we'll let Bradford come in and that way we'll be
Oh,
a full,
We'd have all numbers.
Yeah.
we'd have
Yeah.
all members to vote on that.
so, but did someone who was at the meeting about the resource officer want to just fill us in?
Bill and myself were at the meeting.
So how did
Yeah,
it
who was
go?
not here for the warrant article discussions? Was it you,
Last
Brad?
week.
Brad.
Last
Yeah.
week, just Brad, okay. Yep.
I mean, the bottom
What's
line,
today?
what they keep telling us is, they clearly showed that there's a need for it. The biggest problem was the fact that Kingston kind of wants to dictate what they want to do, and they're not willing. I mean, like, the school seemed like, oh, we'll be more than willing to go back and put it into our budget and everything else like that, but you know, Kingston's like, well, we're not voting on it again, so they were like adamant that they weren't changing their mind on the process. So Jason says, you know, he'd be more than willing to reevaluate that next year. In other words, if we did vote for it, he'd be more than, you know, we could have all these discussions at the beginning of the year, make sure to get put in the, you know, at least try to get put in the budget. And as Bill was pointing out, that the only way he would vote for it is if it was understood that if it was not in the budget, if it's not in the school committee budget next year, he's, you know.
Yeah, that's a tricky, yeah.
That's the tricky one. Do you-
I think my
Yes.
recommendation was if we move forward and recommend the resource officer as an article, we do so with comment.
Correct.
Simply stating that Kingston has agreed, or we've agreed to take a look at the school system, agreed to put that in the operational budget for the following years.
Do,
I just feel like when we start stuff off like this, like the way something starts is the way it can get kind of stuck. And if none of us are on FinCom next year,
Yeah, that's my
we
concern.
turn over a whole new FinCom for, and just devil's advocate. And if we don't remember we've had these, or just everyone else, I mean,
And
we're
then
kind
you-
of, we're
we
sort
have-
of laying
then
the
it's
groundwork for
second
next
year,
year's
and then the third
FinCom.
year, and then it's like, oh, this is the way we've
And it's
always
just
been
easier
doing
to leave it in an article, and no one wants to hassle with it, which is kind of what happened with like the fire department, the turnout gear and stuff, which was, it's not a personnel item obviously, but we left it in articles for a while and found we pull it back in the operating budget. But I think my concern is just once something gets stuck out there outside the operating budget, now we're gonna have to argue to put it back into an operating budget.
And that's where I've been all week long. I mean, literally, I've been staying up at night with this. I can't get it out of my head because, like, part of me wants to say yes because I think they need it, but the other part of me is exactly this.
yeah.
And we're
I'm
setting
sorry.
ourselves up for a problem in the future.
It is, I know there's only a couple of you guys on the committee, but it was your recommendation from the capital committee, still a no? I think it was
It's not a
listed as
capital item, so we're not evaluating it
Okay.
as a capital item.
What was the funding source if it were to be approved?
It would be raise and appropriate.
Raise and
Come
appropriate.
from the tax.
Because it's an
Okay.
operating.
At this point, it's either we make our recommendation or not recommend, whatever it may be. Either way, I think they're gonna go nuclear if we don't make a recommendation. I think they're gonna move forward regardless.
So yeah, they're gonna.
Oh,
put it
yeah,
on-
it's being-
They're
So
gonna
as a
put it.
practical matter, we're really not avoiding anything.
No, yeah,
We have to vote on it,
yeah, I mean, is
whether
it,
or not we're gonna.
is it a numbered article on the,
Yeah.
It is, it's number 24.
okay, number 24, so, well, we can make a motion in a second and then have our discussion and we can vote on it tonight.
That's fine,
Okay.
yeah.
We should do that.
So, I'll entertain a motion on the finance committee's recommendation for Article 24, middle school resource officer, in the amount of $36,000 to come from the operation budget, raise and appropriate.
What is our recommendation?
Well, someone can make, someone basically has to motion for something, then someone has to second it, and then we can comment, and then if we change the other way around.
I'll make a motion for Article 24, middle school resource officer, in the amount of $36,000. And what do you say? I make a motion to recommend.
We're not recommend. Make sure you're one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah, well, in like either way, we have to have a
You-
motion
you need to-
on
You need to
something.
make a motion either to recommend or to not recommend, and you vote
I think
appropriately.
that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a motion to recommend
Okay.
Article 24, middle school resource officer,
Mhm.
amount of $36,000, with the comment that we agreed to move this into the operating
Yeah,
budget next year.
Okay, so, so how about we take, we have a motion for the finance committee to recommend, do we have a second so we can open up discussion?
Well, I'll second it so we can open discussion.
Right, so we have a motion and a second, okay, so that's all we need for right now. Because then we can always amend the motion, or we can vote it, so we can either vote in favor of Bill's motion, we can vote in favor with the amendment for whatever kind of commentary, or we can vote against the motion, which would effectively, then we'd have to make a motion to not,
Something else.
yeah. So, we can just kind of go one by one if you want. I think we all kind of have similar concerns about things, but if folks want to go like one at a time and just sort of,
Well, again, Jason specifically, in person to me more than once, has told me that he would do everything he could to get it in the operational budget for next year. And I believe Jason, he's the head, he's like their chairman, right?
yeah, he's the
Something.
chair of the Silver Lake.
Right. But again, my concern is, and I believe Jason, he would probably bend over backwards to do that, but I don't necessarily trust Kingston to play ball.
I think my concern is the same one that we've had, which was A, we weren't and on the original process to decide what the funding scheme of this would look like across the 3 towns, and it sounds like if Kingston's not gonna budge, then we're stuck with what was dictated to us. B, it's an operating cost that is outside of the operating budget that even if we say we'd like to pull in next year, and even if everyone has the best of intentions, it may or may not ever happen. And I think fundamentally, if we went that way, we are setting up some kind of precedent for next year's finance committee in Halifax. Some of us may be here, some of us may not be. And they're not beholden to any of that. So it's kind of outside the scope of what we can do. 'Cause
We
we're
could
only
say
recommending on the fiscal
with
2020
comment,
budget.
but they're not beholden to say, okay, it's an article next year, we're not gonna vote for it. I mean, it's nice, but
I personally would have voted for it if it was in the operating budget. I'm against voting for it as an article because of all of the problems with it. But that's my one vote.
that's saying much.
So why would Kingston oppose putting in the operating budget next year?
Because they opposed it this year.
They opposed it this year for a different reason, though. They opposed it this year because the budget was already done. Mathematically, next year, you can have 2 heads on 3 budgets versus 1 and a portion on 1.
But if they're the ones that are funding, that say, well, if we're gonna put the most behind this, then we get to set the terms, then they can just set it ahead of us.
They're concerned that we're not, like, we could walk away and say, we don't wanna fund it this year, and then they've got an officer that they gotta pay or lay off, and they don't wanna deal with that.
But we could, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
go ahead.
but, I mean, that's something that we talked about, explaining that before when this position was in the budget. We owned it as a region, and what happened was we paid it within the assessment. Kingston would bill the region for reimbursement for this officer. And we talked about, like, if something should happen to that position. And, I mean, they were selling it so hard that we kept saying to them, wait a minute, why are you so concerned about this position being cut next year? If you feel this strongly about
Right.
it, it should not be even thought about to cut for next year. But I think their fear is teaching staff, and I think there was some discussion that
I'm
the
more
teachers
concerned with
union
athletic
wasn't
costs through the
necessarily
roof.
Is
thrilled
there-
about it being part of the budget as well.
Charlie, I don't know if
so-
you can answer this or not, but who, or Sandy? Who's presenting this article?
The school committee.
The school.
Silver Lake.
The Silver Lake
Yes.
School Committee?
Silver Lake,
Yes.
right.
Okay. So is there any way that it could be reworded?
Mm-hmm.
Could an amendment be made at town meeting
No,
To do what?
to
to
include it in the.
limit it to this year, it will be done in this method,
It's limited
but
anyway.
No,
but future years
Because,
to be part of the operating budget?
no, because the article itself is limited up until June 30th of 2020. It
Right,
dies on that date
right.
anyway. Now, you can certainly send a message in the sense of as part of the debate and everything, but
But this-
it's meaningless
Yeah.
in terms of legal authority.
Okay.
So keep in mind, this position.
That's kind of what I thought you were gonna say, but.
Yeah, so this position is overtime for the middle school.
Well, that's another.
And so we asked the question about.
How many hours?
They don't even have one right now.
No, they don't have one,
Right.
and so we asked the question of if Halifax did not support it in principle because of the way that it's set up, what would happen, and they just wouldn't fund all of the hours. Because it's a non-binding article, so it doesn't, unlike the Silver Lake budget, if 2 towns vote for it, we must pay. This article is not the same. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind as well. So whatever your decision is,
Yeah, so if we don't vote for it,
Clinton was represented during this meeting?
just
and-
by the school committee
Yeah.
member. And again, we know the process, we know the history, we have seasoned people around who understand the process. And so I had never begged so much to pay for,
I know,
for
but-
our town to pay
but
for
you're absolutely
something.
correct.
But we just kept being told, no,
They didn't wanna
we were
listen to
right
us.
there, and they said no.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would do if I were you. Like in principle, it's wrong, I agree 100% on what Melinda's saying. But do you wanna sacrifice the hours at the middle school? But I was the one asking about the data, right? Because you know me, I like the data to back it up. And there wasn't a lot of data to back it up, but the thought is having the presence there is preventing things.
That's not even enough for me to, I don't even agree
But
with
as-
me at the moment.
Yeah,
But as I pointed out, it's like, if you've got a resource officer that's only part-time, they're just gonna do it when, they gotta know the schedule, they're just gonna goof off when he's not around.
And we
Which
just
is why
got a
we're like saying,
full-time
really,
one.
they need a full-time.
We just got a full-time one at the high school.
Yeah, they just got a full-time one at the high school, and now we're looking for one at the middle school. I don't, the need to me isn't there yet. Aren't there guidance counselors? Aren't there other individuals, that already programs? I mean, what is the giant outburst suddenly at the middle school that we just got a full-time one for the high school, that we now need one for the middle school? I mean, maybe there is one, but I haven't seen it, because I just learned about it a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
when they told us, or didn't tell us, that there was a warrant up.
And when I talked to the principal
Going to
of the middle
town.
school, he would say he would rather give up the resource officer than have to cut his budget this year. That's
Well,
what
there
he
you go.
told me.
So I'm not even convinced of that. So,
Okay.
Maybe he wants it.
Yeah,
He
no,
really
I
wants
understand,
it.
but.
I mean, I
if
won't,
he's
But
saying
if he's saying if we had to come back and level fund
it's very
everything,
that
telling.
would be awesome.
right, that he would rather,
And that's why the fear is there. Like,
Yeah.
if the principal's feeling that, that's why the fear is there.
right,
Because he knows that would be the lamb that was sacrificed the following year.
And
Right.
I just think that it starts to set a really bad precedent if we allow these kind of additional positions to be thrown in articles. Because then why wouldn't we allow Scott to make his position a separate article? Why wouldn't we allow any other department who wants to add personnel to just make an article and say, oh, well, we'll fold it in the operating budget next year, we'll
I just,
theoretically tie the next year's budget's hands, and we can't even do that,
and I
so.
just don't like being dictated by another town.
Yeah, that's a whole other layer of it too.
Right.
So you're talking about a police officer, you're talking about.
Yes, we're talking.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a police officer. Oh, okay.
AKA resource officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
With law, yeah,
Go-
so
it's
law
just a-
enforcement
There's
officer.
supposed to be
That's a
specific
title.
training they undergo
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff, which he didn't even get into that.
So is it a police officer from the Kingston
Yes,
Department?
it has to be Kingston because the
Because,
schools in
yeah.
Kingston,
Right.
according to the police chief.
Thank you.
Well, even that Captain Berkshire said, it didn't say anything about funding, it just
I'm
said,
kind of curious how all the other schools in the United States that just have like security officers who don't have arrest capability and who are resource officers, how that works.
well, they usually have security officers because they're not very nice neighborhoods.
Right. But I
That's
mean,
not,
they don't have
that is
arrest,
not
they don't have
the
arrest
role.
capabilities and they seem to be
that is
just
not
fine.
the role of a resource officer. I
Did they
mean,
define the role of a resource officer?
Yes.
It's to help, it's a big piece of community policing. It's to help try to break down the barrier between youth and police.
It's more proactive. as
Growing
opposed
up,
to
it was
reactive.
very confrontational when I was growing up. Police, you know, pardon the expression, was nobody in the building, you know, they were pigs when I was growing up. It's not what I called them because my mother would have cut my tongue out. But it's to help that interaction. They usually are involved in a lot of activities. They might,
Teach.
they might
Yeah, they
teach
would bring in-
some classes. They would definitely be one of the detail officers at any school function to have a familiar face.
But it's
I
not a
have
deterrent.
to disagree with Len. I think it's a very valuable
Yeah.
position.
At the high school, you need one at the middle school now too?
You need one in every school,
But
yeah.
is it a deterrent
Because
to
if they
active
start 'em in
shooting or
first
anything
grade,
like that?
Well,
Then
that's
you
the thing.
won't need it
We,
in
so
high
we,
school.
we
I
asked
still
for
think you
data
would.
on
They can
what
do that.
kinds of behavioral incidents or other incidents might condition this kind of, or might create this kind of need, and what it sounds like, and if I'm misrepresenting your opinions, let me know, but it sounds like there wasn't sufficient data to support the need for this many hours of this resource officer.
Right, they basically said, you know, here's all the things that a resource officer done. They gave us a couple of examples of, you know, like the high school, but there was no data to back up whatsoever that there was a need in
Yeah,
the middle
I
school,
mean,
other than the fact that,
if
you know, we
resources
have
were plentiful, I
a
would say
presence in the
sure.
elementary school and we have a presence in the high school, so there's that gap of 2 years. Now, again, everything that they showed, I would agree, okay, fine, there may be a need in 2019, the way the world is, for a resource officer. But the bottom line, as Kim says, it's like, how much is it worth to you?
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's
I-
like,
there's
if
nothing
it's so
stopping-
important,
There's nothing stopping the new full-time high school resource officer from going to next door to the junior high school.
If a real
if a real
security threat occurred, I would like to think he's booking it right over there.
Yeah, I would think so too,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, he kind of walked through what his day was and that sort of stuff, and I'm glad he has time to have lunch with the kids in the cafeteria and that sort of stuff. But, you know, and
Well, I'm
people
sorry,
can
I mean,
feel
yeah,
free that,
I
so they feel
kinda-
safer, and they can go up and talk to them and everything else like that.
But then
And
also-
again, I don't disagree that there's a need, I
But
think
then-
there is, but I just can't get my
I
head
mean-
around.
Then I wanna see the data that this upgrade to a full-time officer also decreased behavioral incidents, increased school safety, all that kind of thing, because if we
They
start to
didn't
add
present-
those hours,
They didn't present anything like that about.
that,
No.
No, the whole thing with the,
so, we would do that for any other department, if you, like, if a department asked for additional personnel, and we came back the next year and say, okay, show us what this provided to the voters who
Yeah.
gave you this.
Well, we were told by the selectman from Kingston as well, and the chief from Kingston, that again, this is more, they don't really have the data to show us, but that having the position in the school is what prevents more crime
from
from
having
happening.
data, yeah, so it's kind of like,
And that-
Well, then the data would be the decrease in those incidents.
but
Yes,
Right,
but we
because
don't
From,
have,
from no officer
To
to
an officer.
part-time
Yeah,
officer
but I
to a
don't know that
full-time.
we had like a
But
lot.
But they didn't
they
present
didn't give us
anything.
any numbers. And then I'm talking to kids at the school, and they're like, oh, there's fights all the time. So I'm like, well, if there's fights all the time,
I
then,
mean, we had a
Well,
recent.
he
not-
writes up like
fights
3 or
all the
4
time,
reports
so-
a week.
yeah,
I mean,
He
we
writes
just
up
stop
3 or
and have-
4
Reports a
reports a week.
How many?
3 to 4. Yeah,
At the high school,
Yes.
which is 4 grades as opposed to the junior high, which is 2.
right.
So I'm not convinced of the need. Never mind the nonsense with the funding mechanism, personally.
Well,
I can't get
we'll have to
behind
agree to disagree. I think the need's there, but I agree with you.
that. Yeah,
I don't like the funding method.
and I agree with Bradford. I think there is a
Just
need.
Brad. It's a
Oh,
full
sorry,
word.
Brad. I agree that there is a need. I mean, I've looked at it, and I've talked to enough people around and other people, and I think there is a need. I
How
think there's a
strong the
need,
need?
but that's
If
the
I go to
point.
work and I present something,
Right.
I better damn well have a
Right,
good
but
need and
that's the,
something to back
see,
it up.
that's your
They
point
didn't-
though. There
they
isn't, I mean, if
they
they're
didn't
telling me
make their
there's a
case even
need,
for that.
how much is it worth to you? If you had to cut someplace else to get that, is it worth it to you?
But-
And the answer I'm getting right now is no.
Well,
Also-
I didn't know that, but in the
Right.
room, yeah.
Also, on top of this, though, what complicates this is that whether or not even if we like the idea in theory, we're bound to the procedure that they've established with this article in the warrant. So what we have to vote on is the article, and that we can only vote on the article for fiscal year 2020. So even if we like the idea in theory, but don't like the process, we have to vote on the way it's being
Right.
presented, and they are not willing to present it in a different manner.
Right.
So I think that's one thing to keep in mind too, is that with a lot of these things, with all stuff, we can like the idea of it, but we can only vote on what's in front of us. And if they're unwilling to seek an alternative presentation, then this is the only way we can vote on it.
I just loved how, like, when they were like, in 2014, we thought we'd be nice and provide, and Kingston will pay for the resource officer. And I'm sitting here saying, oh, chapter 71, general law, chapter 71, section 37P, which was 2014, says that each town shall provide a resource officer to the school if funding is available. So it's like they were making it sound like, this is out of the generosity of our heart, when it was actually,
Sounds like
in
in
response to
2014, the chief went to a seminar.
So is there any other questions or discussion? So the motion is for the finance committee to recommend. We have a motion and a second. So what we're gonna vote on now is, voting yes means that you want the finance committee to recommend this article, Article 24. Voting no means means we do not recommend, and then we'll have a vote on not recommending, just to clarify. Any other discussion?
I'm just not comfortable I'm not qualified to make the judgment whether we need this or not. I have to rely on the chiefs that went over the data, assessed the need with the principal that made the request. And so it comes down to a question, number one, can we afford it? And number two, what's the mechanism for that? And I think that by making a recommendation for this article, and acting in good faith with the expectation that next year it does get rolled in the operational budget, I don't think that's out of the bounds of fairness.
So if I everyone's ready, we'll call the vote. Okay, so, all those in favor of the finance committee recommending Article 24, the middle school resource officer, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, so we have not voted to recommend, I'll now entertain a motion for the finance committee to not recommend
I'll make a motion for the finance committee to not recommend
Article
Article
24.
24.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second, so now we're gonna vote on the finance committee's not recommendation, finance committee to not recommend. So voting yes means the finance committee does not recommend this, voting no means the double negative. All those in favor of the finance committee not recommending Article 24? Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Nay. Okay. So on a 4-to-1 vote, which I will mention on town meeting floor, finance committee does not recommend. And as with all of these, whether you're in favor, whether you're in the majority, even if it's a unanimous decision, if and when anyone wants to jump in when we're at town meeting and speak as a member of the finance committee to the way that you voted on things, please feel free. All I'm gonna say is what our actual vote was, but you should all feel encouraged and welcomed to speak, and if you wanna speak as a private citizen, you can go to the main mic. But, cause sometimes folks on town meeting floor will ask what the vote was like, or what any dissent was, and I hope you all feel more than welcome to grab the mic and do that, okay.
I'll just say this is probably the toughest vote, because I really, really want to say yes, but I can't do it.
Well, you
It
can
wasn't tough
explain
for
that
me.
when the
Yeah.
moderator says,
Yeah.
you recommend, and you say no, you can explain why.
Yeah.
And Bill, if you feel strongly that you want to support it, you can get up from the table
Yeah.
and walk to the mic, and when you introduce yourself, to say, although a member of the finance committee, I'm speaking as an individual.
And I'm happy
Because I know
to-
it's a tough vote,
Yeah.
right? Because you're right, like,
And
I think it's on principle.
what I'll do is when I make the recommendation, I'll say the vote and I'll say like a sentence or two, which I'll run by all of you beforehand to make sure that it represents the way the vote was, which is that it seemed like a lot of the opposition the finance committee had was about the fact that it's being presented in an article outside of the operating budget, so we couldn't consider it as part of. Yeah, so regardless of our support for the actual idea of the resource officer, our opposition mostly came to the funding, the way the funding was set up, and that was all we were able to.
And I think maybe if you add a piece about, wanting a little bit more information about
I'll get up and talk to that, because I was the only one that was against the idea of it in the first place, so
No, that's fine,
I'll get
yeah.
up and
Yeah.
blast it. Won't bother me any.
All right.
If this article passes, the way it
Yeah.
will be written, the motion's going to be written to take the money from the operating,
Mhm.
from the raise and appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings your 132,000 that I have down another 36,000. Because it would be a
Hey,
raise and
democracy at its best, you can
So-
recommend all you want.
And it has happened. I mean,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
can
of
see
times
it.
the town votes in with.
Was it last
with the
year?
They're gonna
finance
make
committee.
they're gonna make a big pitch, and it's
Sure,
gonna be
last
safety,
year-
safety, safety.
Last
was-
year,
They're gonna
the,
try to swing it.
last year, the finance committee, I think, recommended to not recommend the Silver Lake assessment based on principle essentially, and the town voted for it
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Even though the finance committee said it
Right,
was
and
not
when you start
against the
talking
budget,
about
it was
kids'
just on
safety,
principle.
you're gonna, that gets emotionally,
Yeah.
Sure.
we'll
Yeah.
vote for it anyway.
And that sort of adds to my, like, the bee in my bonnet about putting it in an article. Because it's the
Yeah.
entire way it's being framed, and it's not being placed in the context of an entire school's budget. It's being framed as, it's gonna be framed about fear and about safety. And we don't actually have the numbers, the data to prove that it's gonna improve safety or decrease fear.
Right.
And
But they do feel strongly that just the presence, again, they
Right.
didn't present the data, but they're saying the mere presence of that officer is preventing incidents.
My hope
But,
is
like-
that that won't be enough for some people, but it wasn't enough for me. I can't be alone.
But also there's a lot of scholarly data that giving kids school breakfast increases performance and decreases behavioral issues. So there's data on all
Right,
kinds
and now
of
that
things that you
they
do to
provide
improve
school
schools.
breakfast,
Yeah.
who knows, that's gonna decrease.
Right,
I'm
so,
just
I
shocked
mean-
that Lenny, it didn't deter Lenny as a child. Wait a minute, Lenny, can we go back to that?
Alright,
Okay, so now we're down to 100,000.
um, so do we want to,
96.
vote on the,
I don't have a problem with
We can vote on the Silver Lake assessment and then talk about the elementary school.
Yeah.
All right, so the Silver Lake assessment again is $4,594,942.55. That's the FY20 request. It's an increase of 3.1%. And again, this leaves out the middle school resource officer we just voted on. So I'll entertain a motion on line 75, the Silver Lake assessment.
I'll make a motion on line 75, Silver Lake assessment, the amount to $4,594,942.55, and my motion is to recommend.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, passes. So then we're on to line 71, elementary school.
And that's what I have.
The
Now,
request
yeah, let
is-
me ask first, now this line is a singular line, we don't vote on the school budget separately.
They have a line item authority.
Right, so we could,
Autonomy.
so it's,
Yeah.
They vote one number,
Yep.
they can use it the way they want to. They're showing us this is our plan,
Yep.
but if they need more money for one line than what their plan had allowed for, they are.
who makes those
Yeah.
decisions? The
School committee.
The school committee.
Which is why they don't have to come to us for like line item transfers and things like that, like other departments do and stuff.
And I will say that they have in the past for, if they needed more money for vocational or something, they would come to us to do that. But within that Halifax Elementary School budget,
A lot of amounts
That's-
there's.
that's
spent.
theirs.
It also encapsulates wage increases, which they negotiate for, right?
Yeah, so the wage and personnel recommendations are,
Don't
it
touch.
doesn't, no,
right?
their wage, their raises are already in that
Yeah.
number.
So are there any, again, even though they have the ability to move things around within their own budget, first of all, we can have, let's see, there's a motion.
well,
And a
let's
second,
not even
no
do
better
that first,
discussion.
yeah, right? 'Cause
Yeah. Let's open up
if we want to
discussion.
talk about the budget itself, then pick a couple lines that were contentious and talk about them, because what happens now, if we were to say, you know, they presented the school bus, if we were to recommend funding them next to the school bus, we would recommend the amount less the school bus.
Right.
Correct.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Well, no, they can spend it any way they want, but if they go,
Yeah,
Yeah.
next year, if they didn't buy the books because they bought the bus instead, and they want the books,
Yeah.
they're gonna have a hard time convincing you because, you know,
So let's make it official. Let's get a motion in a second going so that we can open up discussion.
well, what is the motion though? Because
We could just have a motion to recommend and then do the same thing like with the other vote.
even if we want to adjust the amount,
Yeah, because you can have a motion to recommend and then someone could amend the motion with an updated amount. Or we could vote to kill that motion and then make a new motion. But either way, we have to have a motion to open discussion.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 71, elementary school costs, in the amount of $5,659,147.47.
Do we have a second? Motion and second. Okay, now we can have discussion. So in
Is that an
terms,
increase from last year?
yeah.
yeah, it's a 4.4% increase over last year. 1% of that are the text, so here's one speaking item. 1% of that overall increase are the textbooks that we've been putting off for several years. And it's a kind of a big chunk, but I think 78,000 is the cost, but it's cheaper to buy several years of them at once like this than to come back and buy them each year for the next several years. And this was an item that the elementary school has had in its budget for a while, and last year we directed them essentially to cut it because we asked, the elementary school did in good faith sharpen their pencils last year when we asked for cuts to be made. So 1% of that,
into a dollar amount.
the dollar amount increase is 236,000.
In total, but I'm saying they
Yeah.
do a line item dollar amount column.
Well,
Yeah,
transportation went from 415 to 510 is $100,000. I'm sure that's where they're hiding the funds.
no, that's different.
Where's that?
The, wait, sorry, where are you?
So where's the?
This is special.
Okay, that's a special.
That's a different, so
So
spend,
where's-
yes.
I gotta
Where would be, where
freaking dollar amount.
is the exact amount for the bus that they want?
So.
That's what I'm trying to have.
Oh, okay. It won't be on this one, it'll be on the big tab.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I forgot my school budget. It's a yellow, yeah, this one's old though. Sandy, do you have an electronic copy or does anyone have their paper copy
I
of
have
the?
the truck.
I
Okay.
have a school district, but that's.
So, just a reminder, the special ed tuition and transportation is separate, we already
Okay,
voted
yeah,
to
that's
recommend
fine,
those.
yeah.
So what we're gonna vote on now is the operating budget for the elementary school. Bill's gonna grab the, sheet with that.
So getting back to the bus,
Yeah,
um,
so that's another, so we, not to, just to
Yeah.
put it in context, the textbooks are a major, increase over last year. The bus, which was added during the last budget discussion, so the version 2 budget includes about $36,000 to buy to buy the other half of the bus back,
does that
from
include
Kingston.
the cost for maintenance, for insurance, for an extra bus driver?
I believe that's the entire, that's like to have the entire bus as ours, and that's the busing contract with the driver and all that kind of stuff. So what had happened was in the version 1 budget, between the version 1 and version 2 budgets, they realized a savings of about $30,000 worth of retirement that they had not been sure was gonna happen. So the budget had actually been decreased by about $30,000, and then during that meeting, a motion was made to add in the other half of the bus to bring it back to 10 full buses, which was, I think, the capacity from several years back, but it was not unanimously voted by the school committee at that meeting. So just to provide a little context on that.
And how many people fit in a bus? I heard 70.
70.
So 9 times 70 is 630. Currently, we have 607 students in the elementary school. The number for kindergarten, although we don't quite have it, doesn't sound like it's going to be higher than the number that's transitioning from 6th to 7th grade, so that number should go down next year as well. And the other issue I have is I've been up to the school to watch the buses, and some of them, yes, are full, and some of them are at half capacity. Some of them are sitting up there for 15 minutes or longer. There are buses that are picking up kids before they're even supposed to be leaving the bus depot. And I've had this conversation with the school committee, the Civil Lake District, last year, where I don't know why they're doing that. And this is why a lot of people end up driving their kids in. Like, I'm not gonna put my kid my kids in high school, but it's the same thing for the middle school. I'm not gonna put for the elementary, when there was an elementary, and I live just down the street on South Street. So we weren't gonna put them on a bus and then have them sit up here for 15 to 20 minutes. Because they're saying that there's problems on the bus. Well, I'm telling you the problems are because they're sitting up there for 15, 20 minutes waiting to get into the school. I don't see the need. They didn't present any data or any numbers.
No, I think they said that there was no guarantee that it would fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just hoping.
And some even told me it could be the fact that they're sitting on the buses so long, that they're having behavioral problems on the buses. So when it comes down to all the other things that we need to spend for, and you can't give me numbers to justify this, I can't
Well,
get
and
behind
the
it.
incidents they were mentioning with behavior they were egregious, they were not mild, so that was what my question too was, are you sure that this will address the problem? And I think the response was, well, it'll increase capacity for carrying students, and this will decrease travel time and things like that, but they, like you said, even admitted that we're gonna try it out and see.
I see. I mean, I think there are other things you can do first to see if that eliminates your disciplinary problems without spending $40,000 to buy out a bus contract. Or we can better use that money on preventative maintenance or other things that we actually need that are gonna.
They were mentioning at that school committee meeting that they were gonna have some programming for students about bus behavior, and that they have had faculty riding the buses, but that's gonna be a short-term fix because obviously they can't have faculty and riding the buses the rest of the year. But
So you'd like to see them spend the $40,000, $36,000 on something else?
I would take their money.
You want to?
Well, I don't think they need the money. And to
Okay,
me, it's not
well,
as-
see, here is the
Yeah.
issue, because
Yeah.
if
We
you
have-
can't tell them where to spend it,
Right,
yeah,
you can
right.
take it away,
Correct.
budget, yeah,
but you can't
Yeah.
say,
You're
I don't want you to
absolutely
spend it on the bus,
yeah.
and they'll sit there and go, uh-huh.
Right.
And then as soon as you vote the total number,
Mhm.
because they have line item
And
autonomy,
again, if that's what they want to
they'll
do,
put it back wherever they
when
want.
they come up here next year,
Yeah.
they're gonna have some answers. They're gonna have to answer some questions.
Kim?
Brad, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the line item autonomy. I know they have the power, but I believe the spirit of which
Oh, no, I realize that.
Like, they should be saying, this is what we're spending the money for, and if the message is because the school committee is no different and no special than any other elected board. For instance, the library trustees, since Gina's
No,
here.
I understand,
She
no, I
still has
understand
to
that
go
it's
before
the
finance
spirit,
committee, right.
but the reality of it is
No, I know, but that,
That-
they shouldn't do that, is my
that,
point.
you know, it's hard to sit here, or even in town meeting, as a private citizen, and try to dictate to the schools where to, you know, we like the total number, but instead of spending it here, we want you to spend it.
Well, I don't like the
Dictate to
total.
the library trustees.
Yeah, if you don't like the number, that's
We-
a,
No, I
We
don't like the
dictate to
number.
the library trustees, we dictate to the highway surveyor, we dictate to the water commissioner.
but this committee has control over that.
Well, I mean, again, they might be able to move the numbers around, but the budget of which they present should be the budget in spirit of which they, unless there's an emergency.
Right.
That's the whole point of line item. But now the pony that's been ridden is that, not by you, but I'm saying, the pony that's been ridden over the years by all school committees, not just our community, is I can do whatever I want, just give me the number. Okay, then that's the number, you're not gonna like it, so don't come whining to me about the programs that you don't have, right?
And that's,
Because it
that's
can be
my,
the other way.
that's my thing, if
So
you,
let's all work together like every other elected official has to do.
right,
Nobody's more special than the other, except me. No, I'm kidding. And that's just for 7 more weeks. But anyway.
again, and the other thing too is like, well, I mean, to me, it's like adding another bus, isn't that increasing their service level? And we're sitting here saying, what level of service? I mean, to me, it's not what we asked for. How is it that we tell them, okay, here's budget 1, and then they come back with budget 2, which is higher? I mean, that to me is just like, no.
Well,
I
that,
guess I should have asked more questions like, how do you only get half a bus?
so right now it's being shared with another town, and basically we're gonna buy out that other town and get
I
this
know,
back.
but how do you get a half a bus?
So it was being used for a Kingston Elementary School pickup, but a Halifax Middle School and High School pickup. So they'll buy out the Kingston Elementary School pickup and use it for a Halifax Elementary School pickup and the Halifax Middle School and High School
But the-
pickup. So we have 2 pickups with the buses. The first one in the morning brings the middle school and high school kids in, then they come back and they do the
The
elementary
elementary
school.
school, yeah.
So this bus was doing Halifax in the first, and then doing a Kingston run. Because evidently we didn't have as many kids in the elementary school.
Okay, but isn't one of that in the Silver Lake budget and the other one in the Halifax budget?
Maybe.
Well, that's why they were only charging us for half the bus. Half was being paid by Silver Lake
still
and
do.
half was being.
Right, so that,
They just
so that
put
other
the
half,
amount-
we're paying for part
This
of
is how
that
much a
too.
bus cost, and they only charged Halifax for half of it and charged Silver Lake for the other half.
Based on the run, basically.
Yeah,
We're adding a run.
I see
So
what
if
you're
you
saying.
as a committee don't support it, then you would just simply amend the budget to be whatever
Yeah.
the number
Yeah.
is.
For that,
Yeah.
less.
Right, and again, I think that there's other things that they can look at. The schedule, the actual bus route has been almost identical since my son started elementary school. He's in 9th grade now. So you're telling me that, you know, that basically the road is exactly the same for that long without actually being looked at to see as, oh, there's more, I mean, if there's more kids over at Twin Lakes, then adjust it. You know what I mean? But there doesn't seem to be that kind of investment into, like, here's the data analytics that actually shows me that there's a problem. It's like, I look at it and I look up there and I'm like, and you can see the cars going out and, you know, dropping off their kids. And a lot of that is because the buses are up there too early. Now, if it was a different story, if they came back and said, you know, we can only fit 630 kids and we have 631, because by law then, we have to have a seat for every kid even though they're not riding the bus. That's a different story. But we're not there. I mean, the number we're at this year, I expect to even go down next year. You know, the big increase was the 99 that's now in 2nd grade. They're gonna go up to 3rd
But you
grade.
still do need a seat on the bus even though.
Yeah, correct. Even though, yeah, so legally, we have to provide them one. That's why I said the numbers show that we can handle 630 legally. and there's only 607, and I expect that number to go down to probably 602, 603 next year. So we're still, if every single kid rode the bus, there's still, we're not full, and you can see how many people get dropped off.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I'm convinced that they didn't, even when they presented it as a nice to have, and
Yeah.
given the fact that we're crunching here without,
And that's the thing, it's like, if we're sitting here trying to, we got all these other numbers, better needs than a school bus is my opinion.
I do support, me personally, I hear you on the school bus. I was not, that was sort of a surprise during the version 2 budget. I do personally feel like it's important to buy the textbooks this year, because that was something that we pushed back on. When I was on FinCom last year.
yeah, I remember the conversation last year. It was tough.
Yeah,
And
and it's definitely a need, and again, this was my interpretation of last year's events. We did ask the elementary school to sharpen their pencils, and they really did. And then that was the vote, and Silver Lake did a little bit, and they still got their budget, so the school committee, their reaction this year was, well, we did a lot of cutting last year, we need to come back to that, and I completely get that sentiment. And I personally am in favor of the textbooks, but I agree with you on the bus, mostly because we don't have any data, again, data-driven decision-making,
Right.
to show that this will actually fix behavioral problems among the students on the bus.
And with regards to textbook, the way I look at it, if you have a cost savings by paying it all up front,
Yeah,
which you do,
we do.
then you're saving money, so it makes sense to pay for it up front,
Yeah.
so that we save money down the
Yeah.
road. That to
So-
me is a return on investment.
Bill, do you have, or Dave? I'm just looking for the actual
Again, I guess,
number.
a technical question. So there's a bus contract that exists.
Yeah.
And right now, Halifax is paying for half a bus, and who's the other? You said
Silver
Keith-
Lake, I believe, is paying for the other.
Silver Lake is paying for the other. What happens, so the Silver Lake budget doesn't reflect that half of the bus. So the assumption is being made that Halifax is gonna pay it.
Well, it's
What happens if Halifax doesn't pay it?
So it's in the transportation.
They're not using the second half.
Right.
Right, so they probably wouldn't have to pay for the second half, right, because they're not using it.
No, but there's a bus contract somewhere, and I just, what's the,
But that would
is there a,
I can't
is this kind of
remember.
like, here's a Silver Lake budget, it's divided into 3 towns, 2 of them say yay, the third one, you can do whatever you want, it doesn't
Right,
really matter.
and
Well,
for all intents and purposes, I don't think they had the conversation between them, so Silver Lake's probably saying, we're paying for that bus. So, it's probably in the Silver Lake district budget to pay for it, for their half.
Sandy, do you have, I had it written down, because you and I were actually at the
We
actual
doubled
budget
it.
meeting, what the number was for the half the bus. I feel like it was a little,
30,627 or something like
yeah, it was,
Yeah, I was gonna say it was about
31.
30,700, but it was very close.
that.
yeah. So I'm just thinking if we want to make a recommendation to,
Do you have it? I don't know.
I can get to it quickly, I'll just stare at it.
Yeah, if we can't get the exact number, if it's close, then we see 30,000, that's not bad.
well, because then, I mean, because if what we're going to say, if we're going to give a very specific number, we say this is the reason why, then it doesn't just look like an arbitrary, like, we're just took $40,000 off.
30,792.60.
Yeah.
30,792.60. Okay. So, are there any other items in the elementary school budget that folks have opposition to, or that they would want to reduce the operating budget by?
Well, that's why I was hoping for a column with a dollar amount difference
Yeah.
instead of just the percentage, so I'm trying to ring through a couple here that are big. Oh, sweet.
Because if you give me the number, then what I'll do is we can vote on. We'll have to
See,
take a
that's just
vote.
the percent change. There's no dollar amount change. There's no dollar delta.
Oh, I was just doing that.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
Yeah.
good. That was good. So technology went up, what, 18,000?
That's the Chromebooks, and that there's a grant for that
They
as
use
well,
Chromebooks
right?
in the elementary school?
Or was it the library tech?
Yeah, library services also went up $9, or a little more actually.
But remember, some of those increases, and this is what Joy pointed out when I asked about some of those too, will include, for example, I think the librarian is now under the teachers' contracts. There's things like that that are folded in that aren't broken out in that budget. So like their wage increase is now gonna be folded into what looks like the library, just because now the librarian bargains with the teachers.
Okay.
Bargains on the same side as teachers.
I'm assuming health services, the school nurse.
Yeah.
Custodial was 6,000 or so. How much was Scott's requested increase for custodial in total? 4,000? 4,500?
No, the difference for,
5,350?
wait, you mean for the position?
No, for the,
Yeah.
because that's not a new, is custodial the
It
janitors?
was about 11.
Or is that an expense
11,000.
line?
So custodial,
340.
His level service would have been 179,270.
Right, that's for
And
the
he was
personnel. Is this school budget line,
Oh,
custodial, is that personnel?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so that doesn't matter then
Yeah.
either. I think I was trying to ask them this when they were here, trying to figure out what, which ones weren't salary-based or personnel-based that they, so building maintenance was the other one. So there's textbooks, the bus, building maintenance was 106 to 121. So that was 15,000 additional for building maintenance.
they did highlight some building issues, and what we also recommended is that they go back and put together a capital plan so that we're not just responding to things as they come up, but rather we've got a little bit of a view ahead.
It looks to me like a lot of departments, their versions of maintenance is, you're broke, now we fix it, as opposed to what I hear preventive maintenance,
Yeah.
is doing things to prevent it from breaking in the first place.
Well, and I think my big push with that is to really priority rank things instead of just saying like, okay, we've got 10,000, let's fix the $10,000 problem this year. Well, wait, is that the most important thing we can fix, or is there an $11,000 problem that we need to fix and then we need to find money from somewhere else? I mean, rather than
Right.
just seeing us match up whatever dollar amount we have to whatever's there,
Right,
it may not be the most mission critical thing at that moment.
right.
Okay, well, building maintenance was 15,000. Special ed teaching services, is that a contract of some kind? I think they said.
That would probably go under just total sped, and we already voted this sped.
Yeah, that's fine.
there's sped in both the
Yeah,
there's-
operating budget.
Yeah, they're
and-
separated, right?
Yeah, they are
Yeah,
separated.
there's internal sped
Right.
and there's external sped.
Okay, is that a teacher, are those teachers, or is that a contract?
For the external,
It
The
could
one
be,
that
a-
Just says teaching services?
well, it could be like they bring in, like, when they're doing IAP, they might bring in somebody, it could be a contracted, some kind of sped
I'd stay away from that.
person to come in.
there's basically for sped, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of options.
Right, that's why I said I wouldn't really go looking in there.
Okay, so that just leaves the bus, the textbooks, which I think we're all in agreement. We should not say no to in building maintenance. Everything else is, I mean, technologies went from 2 to 8, but it also got slashed to 1,300 in
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
Right, which was the similar problem over in the Silver Lake District, if you look at that.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, they went 0, 0, 0.
Yeah.
And then this year you see a massive increase, and it's like, you know, they've got microscopes that don't work anymore, they can't teach because the equipment's not working.
This also doesn't set up the precedent that just because you cut one year, it means we get to blow the barn doors off the next
Right.
year, but
No,
rather,
but I
like,
mean,
but the textbook
$6
wasn't
grand
good.
for technology isn't really blowing the barn doors off.
No, and I think, like we said, the textbook issue has been an evolving debate that has a lot of, like, we figured out the cost savings, the school community did all the groundwork to figure out the most fiscally responsible way to pay for it, which is this multi-year package plan. And I think what it sounds like we're kind of bristling against a little bit is that same amount of kind of, you know, methodical planning and presentation wasn't in the discussion of the bus.
Right. Correct. The books were much more discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, again, like some of my concerns are like, when was the curriculum last changed? They were expecting a curriculum change in the future, because I hate to buy books and then the curriculum changes next year.
Okay. So is that it then?
Yeah.
So we're able to wring out of the school budget?
30.
30. So
We're
what
running
that
out of
means is,
money.
okay, so.
Told you I work in finance, I'm stressing here.
Yeah.
we-
I know.
Getting
So
down
we,
to stress
so
time.
the current
Nobody
motion
seems to be,
is to recommend the school committee budget of $5,659,147.47. We had a motion and a second on that. So we'll take we'll take a vote now on recommending that full amount, which is their full requested amount. If that fails and we wanna recommend another one, then we go through the process again with a motion for the recommended, the amount that we wanna recommend, okay? So, again, this vote, yes vote means you will recommend the full amount requested, which is $5,659,147.47. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a process question.
Mhm.
If I made the motion to recommend,
Yep.
can I then vote against it?
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I,
Nay.
Aye,
I,
sorry, that was an aye.
Wait, you're in favor?
Yes.
Okay, so we have one in favor. Okay, let's do that again.
Alright.
All those in favor of the recommended amount? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed?
I don't recommend.
Nay. Okay,
you recommended to recommend it.
okay, so,
You made a movement to recommend the full amount.
okay.
Correct.
So
Okay.
now, if we want, someone I'll entertain a motion to recommend a different amount. If you want me to do the math,
Yes, please.
5,659, 147, 47.
Someone taking notes on notes?
And plus,
Right, 'cause
we're on
Kathy's
camera
not
too.
here.
Yeah, and we're on camera, and Kathy, will be able to look at that. So,
In the role of Kathy will be Lenny.
I don't think you want that.
all right. So if we were to reduce the amount of line 71 elementary school cost by the amount of the bus, which was $30,792.60. The new amount that we would be recommending, and someone can double check my math, which would be awesome, is $5,628,354.87.
You only want to do even numbers, so just do 55. If those numbers are right, but I do 5,628,355.
Okay, that's fine.
What was the bus?
30,792.60.
So 793.
Okay, so now so I'll now entertain a motion to recommend for line 71, the amount of $5,628,355. Which was the school's entire operating budget request, less the amount of the bus, half the bus.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Again, this is the amount that the school committee requested, less the amount of the half of the bus. So, a yes vote means that you're voting in favor of this reduced amount, a no vote means you're voting against that reduced amount. Okay, so, motion and a second. All those in favor of recommending $5,628,355 for line 71 elementary school costs, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, so on a 4-to-1 vote to recommend the new amount.
Sandy, can I get that rounded number again?
5,628,355.
Five, 620,355?
5,628,355. I've identified a couple other lines that are increases that we haven't voted yet.
So before we vote on this, actually, how does this work now that we've recommended a lower number than what requested?
So, it's your article. It's not my article, it's not Sandy's, that's the Board of Selectmen, it's the Finance Committee's. You always start off with a Finance Committee recommendation at town meeting. So we'll get to that line. You know,
we have to yell for a
Printed
hold?
with their
No,
number,
but,
right?
It will be printed with the finance committee's
Yes.
number.
Yeah.
no, I think,
No, so, no, you recommended because whenever we've done like Silver Lake, we put in the amount that we approve, which is a no vote going into it. And the same with finance, like with the elementary school, because it's their budget, because it's the finance committee budget,
yes.
they put what they
Yes,
recommend.
That's
no,
right.
that's what I'm
That's
saying.
what-
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I
it won't
do-
be the
I do
school's
need-
amount.
I do need to check on something. It's all right, I may need to put in a footnote about their request. There's something in my buzzing in my
They
head.
do
Yes, it is for
they do
Silver
a
Lake.
school budget that's printed on
No,
one
but
of
it's
the
even more, it's
papers.
even
You
more than
approved
that.
on,
But,
on
you're right.
lower than what they-
So it's the school, the operating budget's your budget, that's the article. We'll get to that as Dennis starts reading through the line items. Line 1, anybody home? Line 2, anybody home? He might do entire sections, he might do line 1 through 40. Any holds, and people say 5, 28, whatever. We get to the school section, someone, I'm sure from the school committee will yell hold. And they'll move to amend the number that you've put in to the number they want.
So the number that will appear in the warrant is the number we just wrote.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and then we'll move to amend that number. We'll have a discussion. If it passes, then that becomes the new number. And since the school's number becomes a new number, we'll have another vote because it's now been amended. Or if the amendment is defeated, we go back to your number and we continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So going back on your budget sheets, and if I skip over any that you see, please yell at me, but I'm looking for anything that we haven't voted that's not a wage and personnel line. So far on page 1, I've got line 6, law. The FY '20 request is for $74,100.
I was hoping that that's going to be enough. The reason is that I'm going to, not this month, not the end, beginning in April, meaning for the March bills, I'm going to be coming in for the transfers, one way or the other, whether line transfers or transfers from the reserve fund. My hope is the court case that is taking up a huge chunk of this will be completed during fiscal 19. The trial is supposed to be late April. But my hope is that won't generate 2020 expenses. So I'm hoping 74 is going to be enough, even though it's more than what we requested in previous years.
If you look at this in 78, I mean, in FY '18, we spent 81,000.
The request for FY '20 is for $74,100 for line 6, law. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion for line 6. I'll make a motion to recommend line 6, law, in the amount of $74,100.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
What is the case, out of curiosity?
This is the Gordon Andrews versus the town concerning the multifamily development on, it's called Amanda Estates. I think it's an actual road. It's off of Elm Street. It's a multifamily where he's disagreeing about the decisions the planning board and the zoning board of appeals made. We've spent, between last fiscal 18 and fiscal 19, we've spent about $40,000. Most of it's fiscal 19.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, for line 6, law, all those in favor? Opposed? Recommended. Line 15, data processing. The request is for $100,000. This is different than the articles that we voted on?
I would like you to table that until Monday.
Okay.
You're not meeting Wednesday, correct?
Yeah, I think we are.
Are you
We put ourselves for the books, yeah.
Are you posted?
It should be, Kathy says that she was posting us for every Monday and Wednesday for March.
Because
That's April.
Next
I
week is April.
checked.
Wait,
Well,
this
even
week?
this week. This
Right.
week's,
We
this
should
week's
be meeting
March, we
this
should be
week.
meeting.
Yeah, this week was meeting Wednesday.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, I don't see it right now on the,
I'll maybe on the board,
I can check the board, I don't see it on the website
I'll
calendar.
go check the board.
I'll go check, that's on our
What's
website.
the lead time
I
on
got it
that?
right here.
We need 48 hours.
48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't do it now.
You guys wanna come in at 9? Wednesday?
I could post it on Facebook, they scan it, count.
Yes.
April 1st, next Monday, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we'll reject everything and then say, April Fool.
Okay. Okay. let's-
But either way, I mean, table it to Wednesday, if you're meeting, table it to Monday next.
Okay. All right, so line 25, treasurer, banking and payroll expense. The request is for $7,900, so $100 request.
I don't
is
see it on
previous
the
year.
board.
That line was cut last year,
Uh-huh.
and she may end up needing it this year. She may be coming for a line item transfer.
What are we on?
Okay. Line 25, treasurer, banking and payroll expense, it's a $100 increase over last year.
Make a motion to recommend line
Second.
25, the amount of 7,900.
Motion in a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, anybody else see anything else on page 1 that's not a wage line that we haven't voted yet? I do not, okay. Next page, we have the, do we wanna talk about the building stuff now, or do we wanna put that off to our next meeting?
Next meeting.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Public safety, police, I think we did everything there yet.
Yeah.
Public
May-
safety, fire,
Just
yeah,
a theoretical question
we may
here.
have to go back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's what we've told everyone too, just be, even if it was a level fund, just because we voted to recommend it, doesn't mean we're not gonna go back and reconsider stuff. That just helped us get a sense of where we were.
Well, no, that's all right.
I don't see anything else on page 2, does anybody else?
Right, what
Okay.
pages, is fire training on there?
54.
54?
Yeah.
Fire training, a good portion of that is, or the majority of that is wages.
Is it-
Fire training?
Yeah. I mean, if we, I didn't mean to, Len, were you or Bill were you just gonna ask about voting the building stuff now and then going back and re-voting it, or you wanna just
I
table
always
it?
just table it, because
Okay.
we're gonna have to, like I said, we're running out here quickly, and we haven't received wage and personnel yet, so
Yeah.
something tells me on Monday we're gonna be doing some fast math here to come up with a difference, so. we might as well
Page-
table it.
Well, Sandy and I, mostly Sandy, so.
We're nothing but honest.
When she gets the wage and personnel percentage, she can translate that into the dollars for each of the line items and get that to you beforehand.
Okay,
So-
it's
so
like
that-
Friday? Friday?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that gonna include any, I think they're.
Friday late in the day, because we're not getting until Thursday night.
They're also looking at not just that, but any grade recommendation, any grade change recommendations?
We should be able to calculate those too.
Okay.
If there are any.
There aren't any? I thought there
If
was,
there are
I
any.
thought there were at least 2 that I had heard of.
There's only really one.
Okay, maybe it was just one that I heard of.
Stay tuned.
All right, anything else on page 3?
Dispatch services.
We did that one already, right?
3.
No.
Oh, no, that was, we did the ambulance billing.
Yeah,
Yeah, the dispatch is up because if you remember last year, I underfunded that because what had been happening is we have been subsidized by the state through a state grant. And so the amount that I asked for was the net, not the gross, for fiscal 18.
19.
Yeah, 18, right, and I went to a
Right.
town meeting in August and asked for the rest of the money. So this brings it up to the gross because there is no subsidy for
Right,
fiscal
and I
20.
don't have that reflected in the appropriation because I forgot about it.
Was that a 1-year grant?
No,
It was for several years, but it ended.
yes, because it was about transition, but we're still getting grants, but it's just not the same amount.
I imagine there's no way to cut that.
No,
it would
no, I
be-
mean, this is a bargain compared to what we used to, we eliminated an entire department,
Yeah, that's true.
so.
Okay. I
Well,
don't,
we,
I'll
No,
make
we
a mo-
did.
unless we have another option for this.
But people got jobs, yes.
No,
So we didn't cut jobs, those people got jobs in Duxbury, but it we saved almost $300,000 as a community.
Okay.
And this is not a wage line?
No,
no, it's a contractual service. Most of it's gonna be wages paid at the regional dispatch center.
Not through the town, though.
But no, we're not, they're not our employees, they're not on our payroll.
they're Duxbury.
Right. You know, obviously there are technology costs, there's electricity costs and everything else, but
All right, I'll make a motion to recommend line 69 dispatch services in the amount of $155,000.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, so still on page 3, we didn't do line 81 highway barn maintenance.
Actually,
Here's a whole bunch of stuff that Steve gave me today that you guys probably want, that you guys were looking for.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see.
So,
Hey, did Steve withdraw his request
He
for that
did.
addition?
Yep.
Okay,
and we've
thank
already,
you.
Sandy, I'm still seeing that comment there, should that be deleted? Where it says
Yes.
includes recycling
Um,
stipend?
Yeah, because it's.
Yes, because I fixed that, you can delete that comment,
Okay.
because I fixed the amount.
Alright. That's still low, technically wrapped up in a wage line. Do we wanna do, line 81 highway barn maintenance, the amount of 12,600?
here's the bar maintenance increase that they gave me. Well, okay.
Wastewater services.
That was his floor drain.
Oh,
Yeah, which one of them is overflowed today?
What?
I hope I delete this.
Yeah.
good.
You gotta go up to, review.
Literally, you had to put something up like outside to stop rainwater from like leaking in.
So this would be an increase of $2,500 over fiscal year 19.
Is it a one-time increase for that specific reason, Fred, or is it an overall?
This would be
It looks
Yeah.
like maintenance, yeah.
It's like,
twice a year, they hire Patriot to come out and,
Okay, all right.
what did you call it, Roto-Rooter?
Roto-Rooter.
Roto-Rooter.
Yeah.
According to that, they're putting snakes down the drain.
Okay,
yeah,
What's what it is.
cool.
So,
How big are they? Can I squeeze in there?
you probably would.
no, they're like,
I'm on an income and
Could
a quarter
save some
here.
money.
All right, the cost for the Patriot service is $475 per visit. The estimated need is 2 to 4 times per year, but the total only reflects once. Should that be twice? Because that's what was communicated.
I thought it was 12.50. I thought the whole increase was.
drains.
Yeah, it's
Okay, yeah, so
12,600
it's
is the total.
12.50 a trip, 2 trips a year.
Yeah.
And it's a $2,500 increase.
$2,500 increase. At least that's what he told us.
Mhm.
And you see different on that sheet?
so was he doing it once a year, now he's doing it twice, question mark?
Yeah, he said he was
He
doing
said
it.
it wasn't
he
being
said-
done.
So
That wasn't what
He
was done,
said
but
twice a year was recommended, and now he's recommending 4 times a year.
yeah, the total amount only reflects once.
Okay, so go down to 2.
He-
No,
he-
No,
okay,
it
sure.
reflects
Yeah.
1 and the 2 is
Yeah,
2,500.
Each
our
visit.
regulations
Right.
as far as
That's
how
one
often
visit.
this is supposed to be done.
Right,
He said
total 2 a year,
It was under
1510.
Scott's jurisdiction for a building.
Because you got 142 tanks, 140 per drain. So that's like a, that's
So
a,
was there, was there
Okay, so-
this is, so the total recommended is 4 times a year. So it's not twice a year for 12.50, it's 2 times a year for 1510, it's recommended 4
How would
times.
that put that number?
Which number, 1510? I'm fine with that.
Alright,
Unless you wanna ask him why he said twice, no, it's recommending 4. Unless he just got his numbers mixed
Well,
up.
I mean,
So I'll go with that.
these are the numbers today that he gave me, so
Okay,
it could have been that when he put the things together, he didn't have the true numbers, so.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with the 1510.
okay, yeah, I'm fine with that.
so then, alright, so then let's take a vote on the requested amount for line 81 highway barn maintenance, the amount of $12,600.
I will make a motion
Well, okay.
to not recommend line 81 in the amount of 12,600.
Motion, we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of not recommending, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now I'll entertain a motion for a different amount to be recommended.
Please check 990.
What did I say it was, 15, 10?
10.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure I don't screw it up.
So,
Math.
96.
96. I will make a motion to recommend line 81 highway barn maintenance in the amount of $11,610.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? So it gets 11,610?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Line E2 highway equipment, the request amount is 58,500, and that's an increase of $10,000.
That would probably be this stuff.
That's the two sandblasting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I saw a
Oh,
vehicle
yeah.
today
You
that,
told us about this.
yeah, I saw a vehicle today from 1999 that was not sandblasted, completely rusted out, and a vehicle from 2000 that was sandblasted, and it's got a little bit of rust, but not nearly as bad as a new vehicle. It makes a big difference. And if you're doubling, getting an extra 5 years out of the vehicle, that to me is a significant cost saving.
I agree with you, but I feel like we've said that on a dozen things, so.
Yes.
I personally would be willing to pay for some sandblasting, but I don't know, in good,
See, this is the whole list of all the vehicles.
That's me personally.
He gave me the list of all the vehicles and how much it costs per vehicle.
Yeah.
So
Why
it's
don't we
like,
pick the oldest one? How much is the oldest one?
This is cost per vehicle?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the total number of
So he's
things.
not doing 4 of these?
No, not all the, no.
No,
He wa-
so it'd
this
be on a rotating.
Right, rotating schedule. That's all the vehicles he has.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
want to
Yeah.
figure out a rotating schedule, let's say 6 years,
Yeah.
and then come up with a cost estimate based on that, I'm fine with that.
I would suggest it.
Right. So
Again, I
there's-
don't disagree with the.
Right, so like some of them cost less and some of them
Yeah.
cost more, like the bigger piece of
So
equipment
that's
costs more.
Yeah.
No,
So like I can tell you for a fact, like
Yeah, what's
the
your-
most expensive one, he wants to do next year.
Then
Not
we don't
not
have-
this year,
we're not gonna
not
have
this
money to
budget,
do
but the year after.
all this.
What you're saying though is you support,
What I'm saying is the
Support
preventative maintenance
program.
program that he's saying is not unreasonable, but I don't know we can fully fund his request this year.
So 6 of his vehicles would require $4,000 cost each. Would anyone be opposed to the idea of funding that line at $4,000 to at least start this
Um,
process? And we'll get one of the least expensive vehicles sandblasted. They can pick the oldest. We can recommend the
Yeah.
oldest of them.
Yeah,
Do the
that's,
4,000
I'll
and
even
then,
leave it up to Steve to which one he would
Yeah.
rather spend it on, but I would prefer. to do
Because
it.
what he said, he wanted to do one of the 4,000s and then it's like the 6,000.
yeah,
And then after that, the next year, he wanted to do the 8,000.
I'd be okay with the 4,000, but I think, because 10,000 would be actually like 2 of those in that
Yeah,
first
the
year.
way I look at it, you have to kind of say we have 10.
Yeah, yeah. I get what he's doing. I mean,
If you take, let's say you sat with the number 5, so that's where it's coming up at 2, and then you average, like, if you put this together, it's 10, if you take this one by itself, it's 8, if you take that and that, it's 12, so it averages out to 10,
yeah.
But, again, it's up to you guys, but all I can tell is I saw the vehicles, it makes a significant
Yeah.
difference.
I think personally, I like the idea of starting this preventative maintenance program, but this seems like the most cost-effective way right now, given the budget, to put in a reduced amount. At least get one vehicle rolling, let's see how it goes, and then we can come back to this for future years and plan it out a little bit better.
Yep.
So do we have a recommendation then on line 82 highway equipment? The request amount is $58,500.
I will make a motion to not recommend line 82 highway equipment in the amount of $58,500.
You have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of not recommending, say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Okay, does anyone want to make a recommendation for a different amount?
Do we, well, before we go to the next slide, do we know what his preference would be?
This, well, you want the 6,000.
So what's the back?
Yeah, that was actually he was gonna do the backhoe and one of the trucks, so 6 and a 4.
So he was hoping to get $10,000.
Correct.
And I'm out
So-
tonight this week.
So the backhoe's $6,000.
We have a list. I would, if I create a list like this, I would ordinarily put a priority order.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this to say that the loader is priority number one, but we don't know that to be true.
No,
Right.
the one at the top is, he wanted to do next year.
Which is the one at the top.
I mean, we talked about the whole thing today, so I know the order, the priority order, because he told me.
Right, I'd hate to recommend
Send me.
the 4 one-ton dumps for the amount of I'd like to recommend that for 2,800, but if he really wants to do the 4 6-wheel dumps for 4,400,
That's each
That's,
vehicle.
yeah, and
Which
that's,
is, which
He
is why,
has 4,
which is why I'm saying if,
but
if
each
we,
vehicle,
right, and you wouldn't do it all at one time
Yeah.
anyway, so.
which is why I'm saying if we, like, my recommendation would be like, here, fund that line at $4,000 increase, which lets him at least get one, the worst of the 400, the worst of the ones that you can do for $4,000, he could get done.
I would either go with
4,000.
4,000 or the 6,000. The 6,000 is the backhoe.
okay.
Does anyone want to make a recommendation for line 82 highway equipment?
I will make a recommendation to, I will make a, what am I doing?
Make a recommendation.
I will make a motion to recommend line 82 highway equipment in the amount of $52,500, which would be a $4,000 increase from prior year.
We have a motion for $52,500 on line 82. Do we have a second?
Just for clarification, it's
Yeah.
4,400.
it's for, yeah.
Some
Okay.
things behind it.
That's all right, that line isn't just the power, the sandblasting, that's a
Yeah.
maintenance line.
It's other stuff too.
Okay, I'll second his.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, again, the amount is $52,500 for line 82 highway equipment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I think that's it on page 3.
Stormwater management.
Is the stormwater
Oh.
management. Do you want, Shelley, do you want that to be
That's a-
held?
Line 83A.
Yes.
Sandy, you've done all the work already in taking out all labor expenses.
Right, so,
Yeah, you took out the labor.
right, but we were going by a report, from the consultant, I don't
Right,
know.
well,
the
I mean, we're
consultant
gonna, I mean, we are going to do a half hour tomorrow.
That's right. What
Of
time is
riveting
that?
TV.
That's at 7 o'clock.
Sure.
Why don't we hold off? Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
like to go to that. My wife's gonna kill me.
We'll get you out quick.
Me too.
Lenny, we'll get you in and
Is
out.
it upstairs?
It's here in this room. Yeah,
All right, my husband.
at 7.
In the morning?
No, at night. It would be better at 7 in the morning.
better.
I know, I'm like,
I know.
I'd be like
I'm gonna work at
ready to
6.
roll. Yeah, I get it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I'd be like clear
The
head.
other thing he gave me was the new employee.
That's being tabled today.
Yeah, I know, I just say, I do
Yeah.
have all the numbers for that, so it is a little bit
Yeah.
different.
If we're feeling, which I completely respect, if we're feeling a little fatigued and we want to, I mean, we did get a decent amount done, and we'll just have to get the rest done at our next meeting. I don't know how folks
We
feel. If you
still
wanna-
have,
Let me see what else we
we still
got.
have the one
So we
amendment
hit
to.
Recycling office expense and
Yeah,
recycling
yeah,
expense.
here's the thing, I'm happy to, like, I'm willing to stay the course because I'm feeling okay, but I have a very different work schedule than everybody else, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
take the lead from people up to get up early tomorrow morning.
I'm fine with recycling. I
Okay.
don't think we should
Okay.
do this.
Thank you. All right, so, we're gonna skip clerical, go line 105 recycling center expense. The requested amount is $3,460, that's an increase of $270. We were waiting on that to make sure that was the actual amount,
Not on the recycling expense, that is what she needs. She is-
3460?
Yeah, she is running short this year,
I'll make a
and
motion,
she is gonna need that.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 105, recycling office expense, in the amount of $3,460.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, line 107 recycling center expense. The amount is $45,000, that's an increase of $17,000 over FY19.
And
This
that's-
was driven by the tipping costs,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a
The
lot,
expense of getting more,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going down.
yeah.
What are we trending to this year?
Better question is, when are they starting a commission to see if they
Yeah, they
shut
need to.
down?
Yeah,
Shut
no,
down.
I have students who want to intern for it, so.
Yeah.
we will
So I would
throw-
suggest that, you know, we put it on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen to start, you know, getting a group of people together that can look at our, you know, the service of recycling and what the town still wants to provide for
Yeah.
services.
Is,
As I mentioned to you, I'm moving to a community that doesn't have a recycling or a trash program. It's run totally on private haulers, and you can see the numbers in our requests for abatements that, you know, every year there's even more people
There's
that
more
are
people
getting
today.
private haulers.
can the town call some of the local private haulers and talk about it?
Contracting?
Yeah, kind of, maybe not even a contract, but maybe like an offer of some type for the townspeople.
Well, one thing that Steve was telling me today, he wants to do is, like with the metal, you know, we're paying somebody to come in and take the metal, and they're getting like $175 per the load, and it's like, if we were to take it up, right up the street, we could get that 175, you know, the money, we were gonna recoup that, so it's like, there's things that he wants to do, that are small cost savings here and there.
But that might cost more in hours,
Yeah.
depending on.
Right, well, that's when you have to do the full analysis.
Yeah, and that's why we're, like, this subcommittee or this committee would study what other towns do and.
I think you need to have somebody from the
Yeah.
finance committee, somebody from the board of selectmen, the town accountant, obviously somebody from recycling. But, and then a couple of people from regular residents. I think that would be a great group of people.
I think we beat this one up pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, yeah, I got no, I'm sorry to derail this.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 107, recycling center expense in the amount of $45,000.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Line 108, hazardous waste collection, the request amount is $14,550.
I'm gonna ask if you'll wait till Wednesday on that. She gave me a new number and I unfortunately don't have it.
they are not posted for Wednesday.
Oh, we're not.
Yeah, but no,
We'll do it
that's
Monday.
all right, we gotta do it Monday anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so Monday, but I believe it went up. She needs, she was talking to East Bridgewater and what they had spent on
Okay.
their day. I know it's at least that, but it may be a little higher.
Okay. We can do line 109, trash collection disposal, the request amount is $201,421.
Was that a real number or is that a transposition? I think I asked that last time, I can't remember.
Right, that's a real number and that's a contracted service.
Easy enough. I'll make a motion to recommend line 109, trash collection disposal, in the amount of $201,421.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Line 112, the health inspections, the request amount is $72,289.
Why are those bold, Cindy?
I mean,
Why are those bold in the spreadsheet?
Line 112, health inspections.
oh, that's
Is that
a
a
salary item
Yeah, okay.
and it's bold because, I bolded it last year because it had gone up because it was a change in classification.
Right.
And I just didn't produce the.
I can unbold
Okay.
them.
Everything else on that page is
Yes.
salary, page 5. We did vote veterans agent expense, line 120, the amount is $1,350.
Make a motion to recommend line 120, veterans agent expense, in the amount of $1,350.
Second.
350. Motion and a second for 1,350. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Did I not say 1,250?
You said 1,250. Just looking at it. Line 122, veterans benefits. So this is one, it's not revolving, but it's, how do we explain it? It's like in and out for that one because it's,
This is,
Veterans
all right, so veterans benefits, we get reimbursed
Yeah.
75% of the amount of money, but we don't get reimbursed until at least a year later. So we fund the full amount and we get money back from the state. We're getting last year's money back from the state this year, but it goes into the general fund, so.
I can't vote on this because of the fact that I'm a veteran and I get a benefit from the town,
okay,
so I
You
have
can
to
just
abstain
say-
from that vote.
okay. Does anyone make a motion for line 120 veterans, line 122 veterans benefits amount of $201,200?
Make a motion to recommend line 122, veterans benefits, for the amount of $201,200.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you. Do you want a break here? Press on?
That's it, right? Trying to, recommend a whole bunch of stuff.
Library expense?
Yeah.
Didn't we already do that?
Yeah, you already did that.
We already did all the library stuff, I thought.
Yeah, we did that last week, I don't think I just did market recommended.
Just my expense.
Yeah.
Okay, easy
Yeah.
enough.
Melissa, you missed all the fun.
Oh, I was busy
I was
with
sitting
presenting the
back.
surveys, and then I ran over here.
We tabled the computer discussion till today, because I went to check to see today. We didn't vote on that article.
Which one?
Oh,
the
Kubota. So we were-
What about the fixed costs, Sandy?
Fixed costs. Can we vote on them?
Can we, no, we didn't
No.
vote.
We haven't voted.
We can vote those.
We voted 4 out of the 8.
Yeah. Plymouth County Retirement, that's a number that we're given. We don't have any choice on that.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 151, Plymouth County Retirement, the amount of $1,181,739.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Group insurance has gone up, and as I explained, we're looking for money at the special town meeting for this year. Even though the rate of increase isn't that high, we've gotten new plans, so that's why it's going up.
Does this reflect the increase in benefits for the group, what's it called, step four, whatever, for buildings, as well as the potential for the extra head in the highway?
We always leave an extra amount in there. She doesn't say this is exactly what we're gonna need. She always,
Because we don't know whether, for instance, the people you just mentioned are gonna take it or not.
right,
So, but
she usually builds in one family plan
As
So-
an extra?
as a cushion
So,
of the most expensive one.
so if we do get the 2 heads,
If
is
we
there a
get
risk
2
that we'll
heads-
be underfunding this?
it could be underfunded, but the thing is, we have enough churn that we don't know until later in the year.
As if
You're
somebody
also
leaves and somebody
offsetting a
else
couple of
comes in.
positions, like cemeteries
Yeah,
going to
I'm
full-time. I'm sorry, cemeteries going to 0 if we add the additional person for highway, the
That's all right.
part-timer goes away.
But everybody else, I mean, there are teachers coming in and out of
Right.
the school system, their spouse, they may decide we're gonna be on their spouse's.
It's a very-
So you don't need to change this then?
No, it's a very fluid number that changes month to month
Okay.
as people come and go, or people hit a certain age and go into Medicare and different things like that. So, because this is not just active employees, it also includes the retirees' insurance also.
Okay, I'll make a motion to recommend line 152, group insurance town share for the amount of $1,068,828.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Line 153, Medicare town share, the request amount is $126,000.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 153, Medicare town share for the amount of $126,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Line 155, OPEB trust, the amount is $40,000, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that this reflects the policy we discussed to start minor increases to what we put into OPEB to
Right.
signal that we're trying to fund it better.
For 50,000,
Yeah.
but with the way things were looking, we thought it would be smarter to take smaller steps.
Yeah.
So we currently, we've been putting in 35,000 every year. We wanted to try to increase it to show good faith that we're funding it. So we're asking for 40,000.
For the newbies, what is it?
Okay, OPEB is
Short version.
other post-employment benefits. So we provide health insurance to our retirees, and basically it's a liability that we carry. We now have to put this liability on our financial statements. The state has said you have to you have to own your liability and you have to start funding it, so, well, we haven't
And
actually said
putting
we have
more
to.
away helps our bond rating
Yeah.
and things like
Yeah.
that.
No, it was just the acronym.
Yeah.
Right, other post-employment benefits.
Once you started
Right.
saying it, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Line 155, OPEB trust, the request amount is $40,000.
I'll make a motion to recommend line 155 OPEB trust for the amount of $40,000.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
And I think everyone of us asked that same exact question.
yeah.
I know we
It's learning the acronyms.
did. Yeah.
Sandy, you have something?
on your articles,
Mhm.
I put a suggestion on the bottom of the regular town meeting articles for stabilization accounts. If you have extra money left over in, out of the free cash and meals tax, that
Yeah.
we have a set amount,
Mhm.
it might be an idea to put whatever's left over into the stabilization account, because we haven't been putting money in,
Mhm.
and it's starting to not be what it used to be.
And it's a one-time revenue, Lenny, so it's not gonna affect the tax.
Right. So this is not money from raised and appropriate, this is
From
money
free cash.
left
That's what
over
we're
from free
estimating.
cash and the meals
Receipts.
tax that we put towards capital items. So, like,
Just a
the
few
numbers that
thousand,
I've put
wasn't
in this, pardon me?
it? Just a few thousand, I think.
Maybe.
Right now, yeah, right, it depends. So if you guys are not recommending the sweeper, if the sweeper fails, the money that I've put in, I've allotted for the 168,000
With
for the
vault and
sweeper,
stabilization.
that we could put into the stabilization.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and-
Because it's something that we need to start building up again.
What is
Because
it?
then you can, the stabilization account, historically, we've used our stabilization account for big capital items that comes up more as a surprise.
Well,
Like all of a
So-
sudden,
yeah, and keep in mind that we put money in the stabilization account that we got back from the breakup of Pembroke, and that's money that's been set aside for any improvement that Zone Lake may
Right.
need, i.e. the roofs.
and we've kept that amount separate, so that was 312,000.
Yeah.
So the stabilization account, I believe, is about 700,000 right now, but 312 is Silver Lake. We want to leave that aside, so when they come and hit us for the roof, we have someplace to go for that money. But this would be, it's a smart way to keep savings, and that's another thing your bond people look at. They look at what kind of reserves do you have, and that would be our stabilization.
So it's like a savings account.
Yeah, it's a tuck
Similar, yes, yeah.
It's a true rainy day account.
So it's
Right.
funds that have already been taxed, and if it's not deployed for the use
It's
of
free cash, we already have it,
Right.
right?
free cash.
It's free cash, and if we didn't put it in the stabilization, it would go back to general fund and go back into the free cash for the next year, but I think it's a good idea to start.
It's also the part of the policy for the town.
Right.
Financial policies, you put in, that everybody agreed to as a certain percentage, should
Plus
be,
stabilization.
yeah, equal to, I think, a certain percentage of the budget.
3%? I think it's 3%.
I think we tried to keep it between
3 and 5.
3 and 5, and that we're very close to the 3% right now.
Well, but only 3% with Silver Lake. Without it,
Right,
if you're not including Silver Lake, we're below the 3%.
right. So that was my suggestion, that we could do an article.
But if you're not recommending the sweeper, then it probably won't pass. So that,
Right. So
Yeah,
that's a
he's
good
not gonna
chunk
pull
that
it.
would be able to put
I
in.
talked to him about today, he wants to put it on there still, but
okay.
I explained to him the reason why we were not recommending it, and he was okay with that. He understood anyways. He actually has somebody coming in tomorrow to demo one, so he's like, well, we're gonna get double streets soup for free tomorrow. Because they're
Lining up the demos.
they're bringing in a demo to show them and everything like that.
Good idea, Brad.
But the thing is, I was saying, I was saying with the stormwater and stuff like that, if you find that, there's a need for like ones with like the vacuum and stuff like that, you can make a much stronger argument that next year, once we've gotten the stormwater, like 1 year behind us, and you kind of,
Funny, every spring we call in 10 different.
so.
Every year a different one of us asks for a demo, we'll just slowly get them.
Same with the-
So I'm just saying, if you see a street sweeper going around tomorrow, it's because he's got a demo coming and they're showing him a branded one, so.
All right, so I have a few questions on the articles. I did step through them, Sandy, and
Yep.
the Pope's Tavern, first floor flooring and the replacement windows in Pope's Tavern both have an H. I presume that means hold.
Right.
I thought we had voted to recommend.
No.
No.
We held them because we were not sure about the funding, whether we'd be funding them.
That's
And right now, I have them in as free
It was a
cash.
question of the COA money versus some of the COA money that was allotted that we already have.
So when we initially funded the Council on Aging building project, we moved 104,000 from the landfill bond, which was unspent. Landfill capping was done, it's done. We ended up with money left over in that appropriation. We moved it over to the Council on Aging project legally. We were going through this with bond council. However, with the town turning down the final version of the Council on Aging project, the money's still sitting there in the 104 we moved over. It's still sitting there. What bond council has said is, as long as it's related to the work that you would have actually done as part of the building project, which would include upgrades on the infrastructure of the current building, the 1840. So everything from windows to wiring to everything else like that. All those would be legitimate expenses. We don't need to go back to town meeting with another article in 104. So there's two questions. One is we need to have a discussion with the building committee and the council on aging of what the priorities are for health and safety in that building. As an example, doing the wiring. The windows might be another example in terms of energy savings and such. But some of these, I'm not as sure about in terms of flooring and such.
Or maybe electrical, because I know electrical has been an issue.
But I think, so there's a question of, should we be using 104 for some of these council on aging building, smaller repair, upgrade, renovation projects, rather than taking out of the free cash?
So that's why I've left it currently as free cash, because I'm not sure how that meeting's going to turn out, where they're going to say that. They might say, top priority, we have to get the wiring done, and that's going to cost $104,000. And then these things still, so if you want to look at them currently under, as would you spend free cash on them, make a recommendation that way. And then if we find that, yes, it would be, we'll change the funding to the Pope's Tavern, but that, I think the same thing, if you would approve it as a free cash spend, then it would also be approved as a Pope's Tavern spend, so.
I'll
So
make
if you
a- would- So we can make a motion on the free cash, but.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 34, Pope's Tavern first floor flooring for $4,500 to come from free cash.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will make a motion for Article 37, replacement windows at Pope's Tavern for the amount of $12,000, also for free cash.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Working 29.
What?
The Kubota.
Oh, the Kubota.
I'm never gonna say it right, so.
Line 29 is the Kubota for the amount of $51,000.
Because I had asked you to hold it till today.
So what's the verdict?
I'm supporting it.
Well, we can do a motion in a
Yeah,
second, then
yeah,
have it.
yeah.
Does anyone make a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 29 for a Kubota for $51,000.
I'd like to point out that, Steve got saved a lot of time. He's, sorry.
Good, you're good.
With the auction, and he has brought in money back, so I think that it is only fair that at least some of that goes back to the highway department. So, I walked through, I was quite impressed at his ingenuity on how to get around certain problems and stuff like that. So if he says that he needs it, I think I'm gonna trust him and say, I'm gonna give it to him.
So I think the question was, I think we all agreed that one was needed, but
Yeah.
we need one that size.
Yeah, there was certain attachments that he felt would not belong on a lower horsepower one. And, you know, you really don't want to be doing that sort of stuff. He's already jury rigging certain things, you know what I mean? I don't want him to really be doing that anymore.
I don't feel like beating the dead horse. But I will go on note saying that Steve does a great job with what he has. So he has saved a bunch of money through the auctions. He did save a bunch of money on 105 with the different paving avenue that he took. But he also, a highway last year was what, the salt shed, which was over 200 grand. A new truck. There's another truck that we were recommending for the highway surveyor this year.
Yeah, so the other one had to take it off the road because of the fact that it's just completely corroded.
Just to clarify, what was capital planning recommendation on this? Or like, how did that shake out in capital planning?
I think they recommended it. It was one of the second to last items.
Yes.
So it was low on the priority list?
Second to last. So it's not a reflection of Steve. I don't even mind him asking for it, but like I said it before, I complain about my taxes. I think he can get just as much done with something smaller that would be 20 grand cheaper. And again, he ran that 1980s. They ran that 1980
jury rigging it
24 hours. But it ran for 20 years.
Yes, and
So-
you're jury rigging it, which is a safety issue too. So if you want
I know,
him to
but it ran
continue
for
the jury
20
rigging,
years.
then have somebody get hurt and then have the liability on the town.
But
It gets
that's,
to a
but
point
that's
where
what
you
you have
can't
that,
keep
but even if
asking
you
him
have
to
a
get-
big machine and it rolls over because
Right.
it's too big, now you've got a liability issue. So I just don't buy that argument. I just don't. I think,
So you don't buy the argument that you should use the right equipment for the right
I'm
job?
saying the right equipment is up for debate. I don't think the 56
And are
is
you
the
the
right
expert
equipment.
on highways to make that call?
Well,
That's
are you
what I'm
the
asking.
expert on any of the
No, I'm
software
not, which is
stuff
why
that they
I'm
do?
saying it should go to Steve to make that
Sure,
determination.
but I don't think it's necessary. He made his argument. I wasn't convinced. So
That's fine,
So-
that's your call.
And that's why we're just acting as, like, in our capacity as taxpayers, and we're thinking about this from the budget side, and thinking about whether or not this is the purchase we wanna make at this time, in this budget, in this context, right? So I think you both raised really important questions about the viability of the machine versus, is it actually what we need right now? The reason I asked about the priority ranking for capital planning is that the committee that actually looks at everything, I'm interested to see where they would place this, and to me, not having been in capital planning, the fact that it's placed so low on the priority list to me, and given that we're gonna be tight on the budget, I would not probably support it for this particular year, again, just because of the context that we're in, just because of the budget that we're in, and that we're asking other departments to make non-insignificant cuts as well.
It's a capital item.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in the operating budget, but I still think we're saying no to other things too. That's just me.
So
Yeah.
we'll just continue to push it off and then it doesn't happen.
Well, again, he also has the brand new $60,000 trackless that can do the same job, just not as fast because you can't run two machines simultaneously. So it's not like he can't do the job, it's just gonna take longer.
And that was what was purchased last year, right?
The trackless?
Yeah.
A year or two ago with Chapter 70 money.
Okay.
Chapter 90.
Chapter 9, sorry. I don't know my chapters.
Chapter 70 is education.
Oh, sorry. No, he did not use the
Guess
school
what
kids'
he
money
did?
for the trackless. So,
Sorry.
Maybe folks wanna think about this until Monday, we can, if folks
I
wanna.
don't, it's not, nothing's gonna change on my end.
Alright, so we have a motion. Line 29, did we have a motion in a second, or did we just start talking?
You did.
We had a motion in a second.
Okay, so we have a motion in a second, okay.
Mine was the second.
Okay, good, thank you. So, the motion on the table is to recommend line 29, the Kubota, for the amount of $51,000. So yes vote means you're recommending that item. All those in favor for line 29, the Kubota, the amount of $51,000, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
I may,
Was it 2 to 3?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Or 3 to 2 to not recommend.
So it fails.
You're not gonna get to see that Kubota. Come to my house and see mine.
Damn.
they may still approve it.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, the town
Yeah,
can
no,
still.
and that's
I'm
what I
sure
said.
he'll get up and fight for it, which
Yeah.
again, is his prerogative.
Yeah. And,
Right.
and again, this is, remember, none of our votes matter any more than anybody else on town floor, so all we can do is say, hey, from the budget side of things, this is what we think, y'all get to make your decision. Anything else
Yeah. We
That's
sorry.
forceful. Yes.
We tabled the discussion on paving of Hayward Street, pending the full group.
Yeah, I thought about that, I don't think.
Yeah,
I'm
and I
staying
talked
in
to
this
Steve
one.
that day, that was gonna, there's no way that's gonna be $250,000, because the whole thing would be engineering work, and all this other stuff, because of the fact that it's flooding over at the bridge area.
Yeah,
There's
there's
no way
nothing
that's
left.
gonna get done for $250,000. He would like to do it, but it's just cost prohibitive. He wants to do Haywood and River and Wood, but
Yeah, we tabled it, I think we were, because we live in the area, but
Yeah.
I was gonna not recommend it anyway, so I don't know.
And
why
I'm
somebody would-
abstaining because I go up there every day and it costs me money.
Well, there are more people than we do now, so. All right, I'll entertain a motion on line 48, paving of Hayward Street in the amount of $250,000.
Was that included in?
It's a private citizen.
I'll make a motion to not recommend Article
48.
48.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Okay, so we have motion and second to not recommend Article 48, the paving of Hayward Street in the amount of $250,000. Any other discussion? Okay, so a yes vote on this means that you're not recommending. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so we have 3 to 1 to 1. Okay.
We still haven't gotten anything from Social Community Action Council.
Then I don't think we should,
What's happening with the computers, like for the police department? What are they on right now?
Say it again?
You know how we're replacing the computers in the police station, in an article? What are they running on right now?
IMC.
I don't know.
I mean, is it Windows 7, Windows 8?
Oh, gosh, no.
I think it's,
Excuse me.
Good night.
Find out.
Thank you.
Windows 3.1.
Well, that's practically what the highway department's running on, that's why I was wondering. I was looking,
I will find out, I'll write myself a note now.
Yeah.
None of us know what.
because Steve had mentioned he was gonna ask if they were Windows 8, if we could get 2 of them transferred over, because they're running off of Windows 7. And we're talking about, that we're getting rid of, they're not supporting Windows 7 anymore, and nobody's actually talked about replacing the 2 highway computers, which are also on Windows 7. So it's like everybody else, all the other departments, like, oh, we have to get off these because they're on Windows 7. And yet it's
Well,
not.
they definitely do because it's a safety issue.
Right.
They can't communicate, so we definitely have to.
Right.
But I wasn't aware that highway was still
Yeah, it's
on
Windows 7. I was
So
looking
now
at,
that they've made the request, I think it's a reasonable thing to have.
yeah, it was like if you're getting rid of any Windows 8 computers, they would
Yeah,
like to get
for sure.
those. So I just kind of threw it out there.
And it's so funny if you look at, some people have the opinion that we spend so much money, but yet we have computers that are still on Windows 7.
I have one final question. The water reserve fund, we did not. Correct.
we actually haven't voted on the reserve fund article. The reserve fund is 75,000 for the general fund and 50,000 for water. It's usually Article 6, the reserve fund. And that's why you see it here as 75,000 on the top, and then underwater, there's another 50,000.
Yep.
Underwater, get it?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And that's the money that. It's late, I'm sorry. Yeah, that we vote every year, to have for when people come in and request a reserve fund transfer.
For water.
Well, we vote 50,000 for water, we vote 75,000 for the general fund.
Okay.
You want to do that now, over here?
Mhm.
Yep.
You can vote it as one article.
So I'll entertain a motion on what will be Article 6, the reserve fund amounts for 75,000 for the general reserve fund, 50,000 for the water reserve fund.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, are we going
Wait,
to-
any public participation?
Yeah, if you could go into executive session for a few minutes, I'm
Just
sorry.
super quick.
Okay, we need a motion to enter executive session.
you're going to be doing, and it'll be to go into executive session for discussion of collective bargaining negotiations with, this could be just the firefighters. I
Yes.
Well, can we just adjourn into executive session? 'Cause I don't think we have anything else on
Well,
our.
what you would say is that as part of the vote, you're not coming back into
Yeah.
public session, you're not going to have any announcements.
Yeah. So we're no more public participation, no announcements, the only calendar issues that were not posted for Wednesday, so our next posted meeting will be for Monday, April 1st at 7 PM. Okay? So I need a motion to go into executive session and not to come back, but just to adjourn out of it.
I'll make a motion to move into,
It's supposed to be a voice
Yeah, it's no roll call vote.
vote. A roll call.
We need a roll call vote, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So Lynn,
How was that?
you say yes. So she has to call everybody's name, and you say yes, that you're willing to go into executive session.
Okay. I think we did that last time.
Yeah.
No, you need to do it today.
Oh,
Yeah. So, motion to go into executive session. Do we need a second?
Yes.
second,
Motion and second. Okay, roll call vote. Len,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Fred,
Yes.
me, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you need your, yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna go.
it's going to take a couple minutes for him to get out.
Yeah.
Take a bathroom break.
Right, right.